Jian Wushuang did not stay in the Five Elements Divine sect for long after he got the piece of dead wood. After exchanging a few pleasantries with the Five Elements Divine Lord, he left the Five Elements Divine domain with Lung Rushuang. In the vast starry sky, Universe Boat was speeding forward. In the Universe Boat, Lung Rushuang had returned to the heaven-suppressing monument to cultivate. She wanted to break through to the ultimate ruler realm as soon as possible and help Jian Wushuang. Jian Wushuang sat cross-legged in Universe Boat alone. He held the black wood he had brought out of the Five Elements Divine sect in his hand, and his eyes flashed with deep thought. After his testing and exploration, he found that this piece of wood was indeed just an ordinary item and did not possess any magical power. However, when he poured a large amount of divine power into it and scanned inch by inch, he immediately found some abnormalities. There was a strand of chaotic innate wood chi as thick as a finger in this piece of wood. It was this chaotic innate wood chi that triggered the throbbing of the ancient bronze cauldron. Jian Wushuang's eyes flickered. He was not in a hurry to take out the ancient bronze cauldron. Instead, he spread out a large amount of divine power and formed a protective shield with him as the center. Then, he turned his right hand and let the Wuxia divine sword move around to avoid any emergency. Jian Wushuang felt relieved after doing all that. He had no hope of breaking through to the Supreme Master level, and he had only touched the surface of the Tao realm. If he wanted to improve his strength in a short time, he could only increase the power of his superpower or rely on divine weapons. For some reason, Jian Wushuang had a vague prediction that the opportunity for him to become stronger might lie in the ancient bronze cauldron. After thinking for a while, Jian Wushuang gathered his thoughts and flipped his right hand again. Suddenly, the bronze cauldron appeared in his hand. The moment the ancient bronze cauldron appeared, a strange phenomenon occurred. At this moment, the ancient bronze cauldron seemed to have a mind of its own. Like a jubilant child, it began to shake violently. The black wood seemed to have sensed something and quickly collapsed. Instantly, wood chips flew everywhere and a green light as thick as a thumb shot into the ancient bronze cauldron. Innate wood chi. Jian Wushuang's pupils shrank and he stared at the cauldron. All of a sudden, the ancient bronze cauldron, which had been simple and unadorned and had no reaction no matter how hard Jian Wushuang tried, suddenly shone brightly. A green light flashed across the surface of the cauldron. The mysterious runes carved on the cauldron seemed to come to life. They twisted and split, forming the shape of a small sapling. Buzz! The sound of a bell that seemed to have traveled through the primordial era and came from the ancient chaos suddenly reverberated and spread in all directions. The voice was so ancient that even Jian Wushuang felt as insignificant as a speck of dust. Fortunately, Jian Wushuang had already used his divine power to create a sealed and isolated space within a radius of 10 feet, so that the sound would not spread out. Whoosh! Then, the ancient bronze cauldron bounced up and turned into a beam of green light, trying to escape. You swallowed the thing I gave you and still want to escape? Jian Wushuang squinted his eyes and a cold light flashed in his eyes. His 5 fingers grabbed at the ancient bronze cauldron. Clang! Suddenly, the divine sword of Weeping Wu, which was wandering around, slashed down at the head of the ancient bronze cauldron. A dull sound was heard. The Wuxia divine sword, which contained the ultimate power of a universe law treasure, was knocked away by the ancient bronze cauldron with a wail. What? Jian Wushuang was so angry that he laughed. He clapped his right hand heavily and his figure disappeared in an instant. With another flash, Jian Wushuang appeared in front of the cauldron. He stretched out his 5 well-defined fingers and grabbed the cauldron. Buzz! 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 Jian Wushuang's body trembled violently as he clutched the cauldron. He felt as if millions of ancient bulls were charging at him and the huge force almost flipped him over. It should be known that this ancient bronze cauldron was still an ownerless item and was still incomplete. However, after absorbing a wisp of wood chi, it had sent the Wuxia divine sword flying and almost flipped him over. How terrifying was this? Secret skill of dragon blood. Jian Wushuang had no time to be shocked. He shouted and his divine power burned, turning into 10 times his strength. The two of them continued to wrestle with each other. After a few breaths, Jian Wushuang finally managed to stabilize the cauldron. Jian Wushuang let out a deep breath and sat down cross-legged with the ancient bronze cauldron in his hand. His divine power began to explore the ancient bronze cauldron. Jian Wushuang immediately found something different. There was a boundless chaotic space inside the cauldron. The chaotic space was indescribably large and was filled with chaotic, dark, and yellow energy. After a while, Jian Wushuang withdrew his divine power and he could not help but frown. The bronze cauldron had indeed changed, but Jian Wushuang still didn't know how to use it. After a while, Jian Wushuang shook his head and said, "It seems like I'll have to absorb more innate chaotic Yiwud Qi if I want to fully utilize the power of this cauldron. I just don't know if this ancient bronze cauldron is only interested in the Yiwud Qi, or if it's only interested in the innate chaotic Qi of the 5 elements." Jian Wushuang stopped talking and smiled. "However, although I still don't know how to use this ancient bronze cauldron, I can tell that the heavy weight of this ancient cauldron is enough to crush any ruler below the supreme level. Even if I'm facing a supreme, I can still injure a supreme by throwing this ancient bronze cauldron with my divine power. The most important thing now is to find a way to refine this ancient bronze cauldron and make it recognize an owner. Otherwise, it'd be a joke if you run away before the cauldron hits anyone." At the thought of this, Jian Wushuang smiled. Suddenly, a huge amount of divine power gushed out and wrapped around the ancient bronze cauldron. He started to refine it inch by inch. Just as Jian Wushuang was about to leave the 5 elements star domain. In the Divine Life Palace, a world-shaking battle had already broken out. This battle had attracted the attention of the entire universe. Roar! A 7-clawed giant dragon that was tens of thousands of zhang long with the sun, moon, and stars like pellets rose up into the sky and roared. The terrifying sound waves shook the 9 heavens and 10 lands. Hearing the dragon's roar, the surrounding spectators all lowered their heads in fear. This 7-clawed dragon was covered in black scales, and his eyes were a faint golden color. The 2 white beards at the side of his mouth swayed slightly, and an endless pressure was exuded from his body. Even a supreme martial artist would be shocked and heartbroken if they were to see him. He was the 3rd generation of the dragon tribe, the current leader of the evil dragon tribe, Long Yi. At this moment, outside the Divine Life Palace, the 9 dragon clans' battleships covered the starry sky, giving off a cold light. On each of the 9 battleships stood members of the dragon clan, all of them of the 5th generation of the dragon clan. Since the Chaos era, the dragon tribe had only developed to the 6th generation of the dragon tribe. Except for the 6th generation of the dragon tribe, the 5th generation and above were supreme divine dragons. A total of 9 dragon tribe combat vessels, with 9 supremes standing on the deck. They had dragon heads and human bodies, and they stood with their hands behind their backs. 2 dragon beards floated around their mouths, and their eyes were pale gold in color. They were majestic and sacred, and could not be violated. In addition to the 3rd generation dragon clan's Long Yi, who was wandering in the nebula and whose might had intimidated the 9 heavens and 10 lands, the dragon clan had sent 10 supreme martial artists to attack the Divine Life Palace. This was not the end. In the darkness of the universe, many supremes of Cosmos Divine Palace were quietly lying in wait. As long as the Hall Master of Cosmos Divine Palace gave the order, they would charge out and give the Divine Life Palace a heavy blow. Gai Fu, are you really going to push the Divine Life Palace to the end of the world for Jian Wushuang? Long Ju's dark golden eyes swept over Gai Fu as he spoke in a deep voice. He and Gai Fu could be considered old friends. The 2 of them had fought side by side in the war of catastrophe that had swept across the entire universe. Therefore, he understood Gai Fu's injuries the best. If the current Gai Fu were to force himself to attack, he would probably explode and die in the time it takes for an incense stick to burn. Supreme martial artist Gai Fu's expression was indifferent. He didn't say anything, but 2 black truncheons appeared in his hands. As cultivators, why should we hesitate to fight? Boom! In an instant, an earth-shattering, terrifying pressure that engulfed all life erupted with Supreme Being Gai Fu as the center. This terrifying pressure was like a physical substance, forming a shock wave that swept across the heavens and the earth. It was filled with an aura of supremacy, And under this pressure, even the third generation of the dragon race's evil dragon bloodline was suppressed. Supreme Master Gai Fu was the true pillar of the Divine Life Palace. He was also publicly acknowledged as the strongest expert since ancient times, apart from the Palace Master of the Divine Life Palace. This was the first time Supreme Martial Artist Gai Fu had completely displayed his strength. I, Gai Fu, the Divine Life Palace, have never feared this world. Supreme Martial Artist Gai Fu's turbid eyes had completely disappeared. They were like bright jade that had been stripped of its dust, revealing its brilliance. Bang! Behind Supreme Master Gai Fu, Bloodwave, Giant Axe, and the other lead seats, as well as many other Supreme Masters, also surged with divine power. They suppressed the four directions and were ready for the final battle. Fine, Gai Fu. Then don't blame me for being merciless. A cold glint appeared in the dragon's eyes. He opened his mouth and let out a proud roar as he immediately grabbed towards Supreme Martial Artist Gai Fu. The other 9 fifth-generation dragons also transformed into their dragon forms. With auras of might in their mouths, they charged toward the Supremes of the Divine Life Palace. The battle had been in a stalemate since the beginning. Kill! Supreme techniques were unleashed one after another, releasing all kinds of brilliance. The White Tiger Supreme held a dragon in his mouth and flung it away ruthlessly. The Supreme Giant Axe transformed into a Chaos God, and the giant axe in his hand split the heavens and earth apart. He slashed at the dragon horn of a golden dragon, bringing up a long string of sparks. The Blood Wave ruler was even more terrifying. With a tug of his hands, a sea of blood was created, drowning the few dragons. However, the most eye-catching performance was still the 9th Culpa King, who had just advanced to the supremacy stage not long ago. Little Bug. His white hair fluttered in the wind, and his expression was as cold as ice. With a wave of his hand, he exerted a force of 1,000,000 tons. He grabbed the law enforcement officer of the Dragon Clan, Longjio, and began to bombard him. He was extremely overbearing. He had just advanced to the Supreme Being realm, but the battle prowess he displayed was not much weaker than that of a top-tier Supreme Being. At this moment, the entire universe seemed to be smashed. Countless voids were shattered and a storm was set off. Let's make our move. The Hall Master of the Great Cosmos Temple narrowed his eyes and gently waved his right hand forward. In an instant, a dozen black eagles appeared in the air, their faces cold. They had been waiting for a long time. Shwa shwa shwa. In the next moment, the black eagle flickered and turned into a stream of light, which immediately rushed toward the great Supremes of the Divine Life Palace. An ordinary Supreme Being from the Divine Life Palace was unable to react in time. A Supreme Being from the Cosmos Temple stabbed his heart with a god-killing spear. Before he could even scream, he was swallowed by the Dragon Tribe. After the Supreme Being from Cosmos Temple entered the arena, the battle situation immediately began to tilt in one side. The Hall Master of the Great Cosmos Temple sneered as he raised his head and looked into the endless void. Over there, the third generation of the dragon race's bloodline, the Dragon Sin, was currently fighting with Supreme Being Gai Fu. As a third-generation bloodline of the dragon race and someone who had participated in the Battle of the Catastrophe, the sin of the dragon was actually being suppressed by Supreme Master Gai Fu. When the Hall Master of Cosmos Temple saw this, he immediately stomped his right foot and transformed into a black crow, charging toward Supreme Master Gai Fu. Today, the Divine Life Palace would be destroyed. As long as Supreme Martial Artist Gai Fu was dealt with, the rest of the people would not be able to do anything. At the same time, in the headquarters of the 9 Emperor Pavilion, which was not far from the Divine Life Palace, the universe passage leading to the Divine Life Palace slowly opened, revealing 3 figures. Standing in the middle was a purple-haired, purple-eyed, expressionless young man. On his left and right, the cold-faced Supreme Slayer's heart and the red-robed old man stood with their hands behind their backs. Let's go. The Divine Life Palace has been waiting for a long time. In the next moment, the cosmic passage slowly closed, and the black eagles of the 3 people disappeared from the cosmic passage. The 3 of them would represent the 9 Emperor Pavilion to help the Divine Life Palace. this was just the beginning. Far away in the universe, there was a sword mountain that was floating in the starry sky. On this day, several divine swords soared into the sky and flew toward the divine life palace. The one in the lead was a cold-looking woman in red caltrip armor with a diamond-shaped mark between her brows. She was the martial sword Immortal, the unrivaled ruler of the world, the #1 female sword god. Behind her, the 7 elders stepped on their flying swords and followed closely, leaving long white marks in the air and making a sonic boom. On this day, the sword chi swept across 80,000 miles, and the sword light froze 19 continents. In the universe, countless people raised their heads and looked up. They were all convinced by the peerless sword Immortal's demeanor. The martial sword Immortal's expression was cold. He was not going to the divine life palace to be an enemy, but to support. Jian Wushuang, since you've received all of Tarot's inheritance, you're considered half his disciple. Then, shouldn't you call this the master's wife? Just as the entire universe was boiling, Jian Wushuang drove Universe Boat and left the 5-element star area. He left the prosperous area of the universe and entered the desolate area of the universe. In Universe Boat, Jian Wushuang sat cross-legged with a map of the universe floating in front of him. The universe map was filled with stars and countless bright lights. Each light represented a star field. The fiery sun star area should be in front of us. Jian Wushuang's eyes flickered. According to the universe map, the fiery sun star area was full of volcanic craters and flowing magma. The air was high all year round. Except for some cultivators who needed to refine fire, few people would stay here. If it were any other time, Jian Wushuang would not have stayed. According to the records, the volcanic crater in the fiery sun star area was formed naturally. If that's the case, then there should be an innate chaotic fourth fire chi inside. I'll try and see if this bronze cauldron only needs the Yi-Wood chi or all the innate chi of the 5 elements. Jian Wushuang smiled and drove Universe Boat toward fiery sun star area. He did not deliberately speed up the stopping of Universe Boat. Instead, he was at ease along the way. He stopped from time to time to look at the scenery of the universe, the dense starry sky, the flowing Milky Way, the secrets of the sun, moon, and stars, the hurrying of the world, and to comprehend the true meaning of the Great Tao. Along the way, Jian Wushuang vaguely understood that the Great Tao might be everything in the universe and the rules of operation. It was illusory but real. However, every time Jian Wushuang thought about it on a deeper level, he felt that his comprehension was like a dream or an illusion. He could not grasp anything. Jian Wushuang kept thinking along the way as he headed for fiery sun star area. Not long after that, they arrived at the fiery sun star area. Standing in the universe, Jian Wushuang looked at fiery sun star area. It was a huge fireball. Before he got close, he could feel a burning aura. Jian Wushuang stopped the Universe Boat and put it away. He didn't wake Lung Rushuang, who was cultivating in the heaven-suppressing monument. Instead, he walked into fiery sun star area. Fiery sun star area was an uninhabited star. As soon as Jian Wushuang stepped into the plane of fiery sun star area, he felt an even hotter wave of heat coming at his nose. There were sparks everywhere in the air and the ground was dried up. Green smoke rose from the cracks. As far as the eye could see, there were erupting volcanoes everywhere. From time to time, one could see volcanoes erupting, spewing out countless streams of lava mixed with rolling black smoke. They then slowly flowed, emitting a terrifyingly high temperature. The entire fiery sun star area was extremely hot. Even Jian Wushuang felt a little uncomfortable. Jian Wushuang finally got used to it after some adjustments. He spread his divine power and covered the fiery sun star area. Under the vast coverage of Jian Wushuang's divine power, he immediately knew the entire fiery sun star area like the back of his hand. The other places in the star area were just like what Jian Wushuang had seen. There were dry and barren volcanoes everywhere. A few cultivators were hiding in the dark and cultivating in seclusion to refine the firepower. The cultivators' cultivations weren't high, so Jian Wushuang didn't disturb them. His divine power just swept past them and went elsewhere. In addition, Jian Wushuang also found a huge natural karst cave in the center of the fiery sun star area. This cave was incomparably huge, taking up almost half of Fiery Sun Star area. Inside, a large amount of lava was rolling like boiling water. Kept boiling and fist-sized bubbles gushed out. Many branches spread out from the Fiery Sun Star system like a spider web, leading to countless volcanoes. It could be said that the current landscape of the entire Fiery Sun Star system was formed by this magma cave. If there's innate fourth fire chi in the Fiery Sun Star area, it should be in this cave. Jian Wushuang squinted his eyes and then took a step forward. Suddenly, he shot toward the karst cave in the center of Fiery Sun Star area. A moment later, a cave with a wild monster's mouth wide open appeared in front of Jian Wushuang. As he stood in front of the cave, waves of heat waves that had formed a substance rushed toward him. Jian Wushuang's divine body couldn't help but crack slightly. Then, Jian Wushuang took a deep breath and divine power gushed out of his body. He then plunged into the lava in the karst cave. Bang! Lava splashed up like waves and soon, Jian Wushuang's figure was gradually swallowed by the lava. In the karst cave, the terrifyingly high temperature was enough to melt everything. The boiling lava attacked Jian Wushuang and washed over his divine body. An ordinary ultimate ruler would have been melted into a pool of blood by the lava. However, under Jian Wushuang's boundless divine power, the lava could not hurt him at all. Jian Wushuang continued to sink and his divine power continued to explore, looking for the innate fourth fire chi. At the same time, he felt the ancient bronze cauldron in his interspatial ring become restless again. Not long after Jian Wushuang was immersed in the lava, he did not know that a group of uninvited guests had gradually arrived outside the Fiery Sun Star area. Hurry up! In the scorching sun karst cave, the time for the fire primordial spirit fruit to bear fruit every 1,000,000 years is almost up. This time, we can't let anyone else beat us to it. 7 ruler realm experts with different appearances stood outside the Fiery Sun Star system and spoke with burning eyes. There were both men and women among the 7 or 8 rulers, and their auras were very different. It was obvious that they had come from all over the world and were not from the same sect. One of them was a seductive woman in red with a hot body, revealing her shoulders and beautiful legs. She smiled and said, "The fire yuan fruit bears fruit once every 1,000,000 years, and there are 7 fruits at a time. The competition is usually very fierce. This time we have Brother Tuoba, so we can definitely get all 7 fire yuan fruits." A tall, burly man in a black robe beside the charming woman laughed heartily when he heard this. "Seventh sister, don't worry. This time I'm here. Getting the fire yuan fruit will be a piece of cake." After that, he paused for a moment before he continued. "Let's go. It seems like we are the first ones who have come to Fiery Sun Star area. We should go to the Fiery Sun Karst Cave and get a good spot. I'll follow Big Brother Tuoba's arrangements." That's right. 3 days later, the Fire Origin Dao fruit will surface from the lava of the Fiery Sun Karst Cave. At that time, the 7 of us will attack together and take the Fire Origin Dao fruit. The others chimed in. A moment later, the 7 of them flashed and stepped into the Fiery Sun Star area. They didn't stop in Fiery Sun Star area. They went straight to the center of the huge cave, found a place to sit down cross-legged, and waited for the Fire Yuan fruit to appear. And this was only the beginning. In the next 3 days, more and more ruler-level cultivators came from afar and stepped into the blazing Sun Star domain. They guarded the scorching Sun Cave and the Fire Yuan fruit. Suddenly, the originally desolate and uninhabited flaming Sun Star area became lively. There were even experts who were close to the invincible ruler level. The atmosphere at the side of the scorching Sun Karst Cave gradually became extremely heavy. The rulers sized each other up, their eyes filled with deep enmity and fear. What no one noticed was that beneath their feet, in the terrifying lava of the flaming Sun Karst Cave, a black-haired figure had already sunk to the bottom. What is this? Jian Wushuang squinted his eyes and looked at the ball of fire formed by countless flames and lava in front of him. Under the huge lava cave, a fist-sized fireball floated quietly, like a king of flames, separating all the lava. A wave of scorching heat separated from the fireball and formed into terrifying lava. Seeing this, The divine light in Jian Wushuang's eyes suddenly grew by 3 inches. He could feel that the lava in the cave was formed by the fire power of the fist-sized fireball. In other words, this fist-sized fireball was the reason why the entire fiery sun star area had become so barren. Taking a deep breath, Jian Wushuang spread out his divine power and grabbed the fireball carefully. Wang! However, before Jian Wushuang's boundless divine power touched the ball of fire, his divine power was completely burned away by the fire. The Kanate Qi of 5 elements was born from the chaos. It was extremely overbearing and could not be controlled by anyone. The reason why Jian Wushuang was able to grab the second Wu Qi was that the second Wu Qi was naturally mild and not the extremely dangerous 5 elements Qi. However, the 4th fire Qi was the 5 elements Qi, which was only second to the 1st metal Qi and was extremely dangerous. To have such power, it must be the innate 4th fire Qi. Jian Wushuang squinted his eyes and thought for a while. Then, he took out the ancient bronze cauldron with his right hand. Jian Wushuang didn't need to do anything. As soon as the cauldron appeared, the fireball and the cauldron were like 2 magnets that attracted each other. The cauldron turned and the fireball flew in like a lost child who had found its home. In an instant, the ancient bronze cauldron changed again. On the body of the ancient bronze cauldron, the originally dim and obscure mysterious runes lit up. Red flames streaked across the body of the cauldron. In an instant, the lifeless bronze cauldron seemed to come to life. It spun wildly in the air and kept ringing the ancient bell. Buzz, 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 buzz. The sound of a great bell spread in all directions like the drums of the ancient heavenly court. In an instant, the entire lava cave began to shake violently. Outside the cave, the rulers who were waiting for the birth of the fire yuan fruit glared at each other and were ready to fight felt the tremors from beneath their feet. Their expressions changed. What's going on? What happened? What's the situation? They looked at each other, and their pupils shrank. They had never heard of such a big event when the fire yuan fruit was born. Fortunately, the vibration did not last long before it calmed down. Under the scorching sun cave, Jian Wushuang released his divine power, and it automatically formed a boundary to seal off the aura of the ancient bronze cauldron. Otherwise, if the cauldron were to act according to its temperament, the entire fiery sun star area would not be able to withstand it. The power of the ancient bronze cauldron was not to be taken lightly. Besides the sapling that had absorbed the Yi Wu Qi, another flame mark appeared on the cauldron. He had already obtained 2 of the Kanate 5 elemental Qi. Jian Wushuang squinted his eyes and immersed his divine power into the chaotic space of the ancient bronze cauldron. In the chaotic space, other than the dormant Yi Wu Qi, there were countless red divine fires. After I completely control this cauldron, I should be able to use the power of the 5 elements inside. Jian Wushuang's eyes flickered. He immediately turned his right hand and put the ancient bronze cauldron into his interspatial ring. After doing all this, just as Jian Wushuang was about to leave, he suddenly let out a soft gasp. What is this? In a crack in the rock wall under the lava, a vine with 7 fireball fruits hanging on it broke out of the ground with difficulty. Perhaps it was because Jian Wushuang had taken away the innate 4th fire Qi. But the 7th fruit withered instantly before it was formed. The vine had also stopped growing. It had stopped moving upward. Fire yuan fruit? Jian Wushuang raised his eyebrows. The fire yuan fruit contained a large amount of divine power, which was very beneficial for cultivators who practiced fire-related superpowers and secret skills. In the universe, it was considered a good Dao fruit. This thing was not of much use to Jian Wushuang. After taking a glance at it, he shook his head and no longer paid attention to it. He then shot it out of the scorching sun-karst cave. Outside the scorching sun cave, the various ruler experts from all over the world were waiting quietly. The fire yuan fruit should have appeared by now. Why isn't it out yet? Yeah, usually the fire yuan fruit would be out by this time. What happened this time? The rulers all frowned. One of the chief rulers said tentatively, "Do you think that the vibration from the bottom of the cave a few days ago was caused by someone who had gone to the bottom of the cave before us and took the fire yuan fruit?" As soon as he said that, someone sneered, That's impossible. The temperature in this cave has already reached tens of billions of degrees. Even an unparalleled ruler wouldn't be able to last more than a few hours before being burned to ashes by the high-temperature lava. Just as this person finished speaking, a sudden change occurred. Gulyalu! Gulyalu! In the cave, the magma began to boil as if a monster was about to come out of it. The next moment, the lava in the entire cave formed a huge whirlpool. Could it be that the fire yuan fruit is about to be born? The birth of the fire yuan fruit this time has caused so many strange phenomena. Could it be that the number of fire yuan fruits this time will be far more than before? All of a sudden, the people who came to fight for the fire yuan fruit were excited and spoke excitedly. Countless divine power gushed out as they stared at the center of the vortex. They were ready to attack and snatch the fire yuan fruit as soon as they saw it. Just as they mustered up all their strength and were about to make a move, a scene that made them dumbfounded happened. A black-robed, black-haired, tall, and bearded loathsome visitor was being lifted up by the lava. He was like a god of fire, his expression indifferent as he walked out of the depths of the lava. Behind him, the sky was filled with flames. It was Jian Wushuang, who had changed his appearance. Why is it a human? Who is he? Where's the fire yuan fruit? A mere second-stage Omega ruler? Then the rulers came back to their senses with a quiver. They sized up Jian Wushuang and said in surprise. A white-haired, white-robed, almost unparalleled old man frowned and said in a deep voice, "Kid, let me ask you, where's the fire yuan fruit? Did you take it?" After he finished speaking, the other chief rulers immediately chided him. "Right, kid, hand over the fire yuan fruit." "Humph, you must have taken the fire yuan fruit. Quickly hand it over. Hand over the fire yuan fruit. I'll spare your life." Everyone, this man must have used some secret technique to sneak into the lava and take the fire yuan fruit. The rebukes and pressure came at him. Jian Wushuang frowned and a cold light flashed in his eyes. "I didn't take the fire yuan fruit. It's under the lava. You can take it if you want." Jian Wushuang took a deep breath, suppressed his anger, and said calmly, "You didn't take it? If you say you didn't take it, then you didn't take it. What proof do you have?" An ultimate ruler snorted coldly and stared at Jian Wushuang in disdain. Jian Wushuang squinted his eyes and coldness appeared in his eyes again. He asked, "Then how do you want me to prove it?" The final ruler, upon hearing this, immediately sneered. He said disdainfully, "It's simple. Take out your interspatial ring and let us check it. If there is no fire yuan fruit, we will believe you." Hearing this, Jian Wushuang's eyes flickered with coldness. He turned to the others and asked indifferently, "Do you all have the same intention?" The rulers were not afraid of Jian Wushuang's gaze. Instead, they sneered and replied, "That's right. Hand over your interspatial ring and let us check it. Yes, if you don't have the fire yuan fruit, we'll let you go. We won't make things difficult for you." "Humph, kid. I'm warning you. Don't try to play any tricks. There are so many of us here. If you don't hand over your interspatial ring, today will be the day you die." The sneers and threats came one after another. Jian Wushuang replied expressionlessly, "I'll explain it for the last time. If I say I didn't take it, I didn't take it. If you don't believe me, you can go down to the bottom of the lava and check it out." After saying that, Jian Wushuang turned around and was about to leave. "You want to leave without handing over the fire yuan fruit? It won't be that easy. This kid must have a secret technique to pass through the flames and lava. Let's capture him and force him to reveal this secret technique." "Stop right there." A yellow-robed, evil-looking young man with the cultivation of an ultimate ruler frowned. He immediately jumped up and stretched out his right hand to grab Jian Wushuang's shoulder. The grab was filled with divine power. If Jian Wushuang was an ordinary second-stage ruler, he would have lost his fighting power even if he did not die. "He killed me just because he suspected that I took the fire yuan fruit." "Fine, you asked for it." Jian Wushuang shook his head and sighed in his heart. In an instant, an earth-shattering sword chi shot up from Jian Wushuang and spread in all directions. Under this sharp sword energy, the entire fiery sun star area was like a disaster was about to befall. The next moment, Jian Wushuang used his right hand as a sword and turned around to slash at the ultimate ruler, who was trying to grab him. Whoosh! A heaven-opening sword ray instantly slashed out, tearing the void apart for thousands of feet. This is the expression of the ultimate ruler who had been trying to grab Jian Wushuang changed drastically, and his eyes were filled with horror as if he had seen a ghost. However, it was too late for him to change his move at the last minute. He watched helplessly as the poignant sword gleam grew bigger and bigger in his eyes before it finally cut into his body. His divine body collapsed. His body and soul were destroyed. One-hit kill. The entire place instantly fell into a dead silence. Everyone was staring at Jian Wushuang with fear in their eyes. After a long time, a tall and burly ultimate ruler stepped out and said in a deep voice, "Everyone, don't be afraid. The fire yuan fruit must be in this man's hands. Let's kill him together and get the fire yuan fruit." As soon as he finished speaking, the others looked at each other, then gritted their teeth and nodded heavily. "That's right. Let's attack together. No matter how strong he is, he's only a second-stage ruler. He's no match for all of us. Kill!" In an instant, dozens of ruler realm experts, including the almost invincible ultimate ruler, charged at Jian Wushuang at the same time. Countless superpowers were launched at Jian Wushuang. Seeing this, Jian Wushuang's expression turned extremely cold. "You're all looking for death," Jian Wushuang said coldly. Whoosh! The Wuxia divine sword instantly appeared in Jian Wushuang's hand. His black hair flew in the air as he slashed down, shattering the countless divine skills that were smashing at him. Then, he swept out and killed the dozens of ruler realm experts. A one-sided massacre had begun. Sword light crisscrossed, and sword shadows weaved together as they slashed down in the void. Countless drops of divine blood fell, and the entire fiery sun star area became a sea of blood. Jian Wushuang, who had gone on a killing spree, was like a bloodthirsty Azura. With a casual slash of his sword, he took away a life mercilessly. For the current Jian Wushuang, killing an ordinary ruler of the same realm as him was as easy as crushing an ant. Don't kill me. Quickly escape. I don't want the fire yuan fruit anymore. Let me go." Countless people were shocked to find that the soft persimmon that they thought could be crushed at their will was like a god of death at this moment. He was slaughtering their lives like they were pigs and dogs. For a moment, wailing and begging for mercy sounded one after another. Jian Wushuang's expression was cold, and he did not hold back his Wuxia divine sword. In the time it took for an incense stick to burn, Jian Wushuang had killed dozens of rulers. In the end, there was only a tall and charming woman left. She was curled up in a ball, trembling and looking at Jian Wushuang in fear. Just now, she had seen with her own eyes how her invincible brother Tuoba had been split into two by this black-haired man. Jian Wushuang was expressionless as he approached her step by step. He had already made a decision when he left the Divine Life Palace. It was fine if he did not take action during this escape journey. However, once he took action, he would do it in a thunderous manner and eliminate the roots. He would not allow anything to happen that would expose his identity. Don't come over. Let me go." The beautiful woman looked at Jian Wushuang, who was approaching her step by step, and her face suddenly turned pale as she screamed, "Die!" Jian Wushuang lowered his eyes. At that moment, he had put away the Wuxia divine sword, and the blood-red sword light was gathering on his fingers. Looking at the increasingly terrifying sword light in Jian Wushuang's hand, the beautiful woman's thoughts ran wildly. Just as the beautiful woman was in a life-and-death crisis, she suddenly thought of something and shouted, "Your Excellency, are you looking for the innate fourth fire qi? I know where else there is a large amount of Xiantian fourth fire qi." After she finished speaking, she stared at Jian Wushuang closely, not King of Day to miss any subtle expression on Jian Wushuang's face. Her heart was beating fast. In her eyes there was hope. What? Finally, Jian Wushuang stopped and looked down at the beautiful woman who was sitting on the ground with her chest heaving up and down. He asked calmly, "How did you know I was looking for the innate fourth fire qi?" The gorgeous woman looked at Jian Wushuang, who had stopped, and heaved a sigh of relief. She knew that she had made the right bet. The beautiful woman didn't dare to keep him in suspense. She looked at Jian Wushuang and quickly explained, "Your Excellency, I'm just making a wild guess. Since you don't like the fire yuan fruit, and you want to go to the bottom of this karst cave, then there must be something more attractive to you at the bottom of the magma cave. And my cultivation method is very sensitive to fire power. Combined with the situation in the fiery sunstar area, I guess that Your Excellency is looking for the innate fourth fire qi." After saying that, the beautiful woman didn't even dare to breathe. She looked at Jian Wushuang nervously. After a while, she heard Jian Wushuang's voice. "You've got an exquisite heart." Jian Wushuang nodded slightly, confirming the woman's guess. After a pause, he asked, "You said before that you know where there is a large amount of Xiantian fourth fire qi. Is that true?" Hearing this, the beautiful woman was ecstatic. She knew that since Jian Wushuang didn't attack her immediately but asked her, it meant that she was finally safe. After taking a deep breath, the beautiful woman said respectfully, "Your Excellency, I come from the Spirit Bristle Holy Land. In our sacred land, there is a huge fire pool, which is dedicated to a large amount of innate fourth fire qi." Hearing this, Jian Wushuang squinted his eyes and said with a faint smile, "Oh? You mean you want me to go to your Spirit Bristle Holy Land to get the innate fourth fire qi? When the time comes, I will follow you to the Spirit Bristle Holy Land. I'm afraid it will be easy to enter, but difficult to come out, right?" When the beautiful woman heard this, she immediately knew that her words were a little naive. After thinking for a while, she gritted her teeth and said, "Sir, I know that there is a secret passage in the sacred land that leads to the innate fourth fire pond. If you believe me, I can guarantee that I will not reveal your information. After entering the Spirit Bristle Holy Land, I will take you to the innate fourth fire pond without you knowing." Jian Wushuang didn't reply. Instead, he turned to look at the sky in the distance, deep in thought. He had heard of the Spirit Bristle Holy Land. According to the historical records of the Divine Life Palace, the Spirit Bristle Holy Land was one of the top forces in the entire universe 10,000 chaos cycles ago. It had a glorious past with 10 supremes. However, after the death of the Spirit Bristle Holy Land's ancestor, the Spirit Bristle Holy Land, it had never been able to rise again. In the recent 10,000 chaos cycles, it had declined even more and more. It was even forced to move its entire sect to the depths of the universe and come to the desolate area of the universe. The Spirit Bristle Holy Land was an immortal holy land. It was an ancient orthodoxy, but it had long since fallen to the third-rate power of the universe. It was said that there were no supremes in the Spirit Bristle Holy Land. Even if there were supremes, they were only the lowest-level supremes who were struggling at death's door. After a while, Jian Wushuang looked back at the beautiful woman and said, "How should I address you?" "Feng Xian, sir. You can just call me Feng Xian," the beautiful woman quickly replied. Jian Wushuang nodded and said casually, "Let's go, Feng Xian. Take me to your Spirit Bristle Holy Land." "Yes." The beautiful woman couldn't help but smile and quickly nodded. Jian Wushuang glanced at her and said, "Don't be happy too early. After you go to the Spirit Bristle Holy Land, I hope you are not lying to me. Because the price of lying to me is something you can't afford." When the beautiful woman heard this, she couldn't help but feel a chill in her heart. She quickly lowered her head and cupped her hands. "I don't dare." Jian Wushuang let out a and let Feng Xian ruler lead the way as they headed towards Spirit Bristle Holy Land. According to what Feng Xian had said, the Spirit Bristle Holy Land wasn't too far from here. It would only take a month or so to get there by driving universe boat. Jian Wushuang was not in a hurry. He let Feng Xian lead the way in universe boat while he sat down cross-legged and refined the ancient bronze cauldron. The difficulty of refining the ancient bronze cauldron was unprecedented. Ever since he left the 5 elements star domain, he had been refining it every day, but he had only managed to refine 1% of it. Now, he could only barely keep the cauldron from escaping. More than a month passed in the blink of an eye. Soon, a red planet appeared in front of Jian Wushuang. This planet was where the Spirit Bristle Holy Land was located. Sir Buki, we have arrived at the Spirit Bristle Holy Land, Ruler Feng Xian said softly. Jian Wushuang slowly opened his eyes and a bright light flashed in his eyes. In the past few days, Feng Xian had been very obedient, like a tamed kitten. She stayed quietly by Jian Wushuang's side, not King of Day to disturb him. Let's go, he said. Exhaling, Jian Wushuang stood up and left the universe boat. Jian Wushuang did not feel any fear when he came to the Spirit Bristle Holy Land. He did not care whether Feng Xian would call the people of the sacred land to swarm after her arrival. Let's not talk about whether there were still supremes in the Spirit Bristle Holy Land. Even if there were supremes, so what? The current Jian Wushuang didn't dare to say that he was stronger than a supreme. However, if he was determined to leave, ordinary supremes definitely wouldn't be able to stop him. After putting Universe Boat away, Jian Wushuang and Long-Hearted Ruler walked side by side towards Spirit Bristle Holy Land. As soon as he arrived at the entrance of Spirit Bristle Holy Land, he saw 2 third-stage rulers guarding the entrance. They first greeted Feng Xian respectfully, then looked at Jian Wushuang and asked in confusion, Elder Feng Xian, who is this? Hegemon's Sacred Heart's expression was calm as she replied, This is an old friend of mine. He was invited by me to be my guest, so you don't have to care about him. You may leave. It was clear that Feng Xian had some status in the Spirit Bristle Holy Land. After she finished speaking, the 2 third-stage rulers immediately stopped asking questions and obediently let them pass. As he walked into the Spirit Puppet Sanctuary, the 9 towering mountains came into view. Jian Wushuang sized up the Spirit Puppet Sanctuary and joked, You're also an elder of the Spirit Bristle Holy Land? Not abandoned, sir. Ruler Feng Xian bitterly smiled. As long as the Spirit Bristle Holy Land's top-tier ultimate rulers are present, they can become elders. They aren't even worth mentioning in front of you. Jian Wushuang nodded and did not speak anymore. Along the way, the two met many Spirit Bristle Holy Land disciples. It could be seen that Feng Xian ruler had a rather prestigious status in the Spirit Bristle Holy Land. When these Spirit Bristle Holy Land disciples saw Feng Xian ruler, they stopped and greeted her respectfully. In front of Jian Wushuang, ruler Feng Xian was as docile as a kitten. However, in front of these Spirit Bristle Holy Land disciples, her expression changed immediately. Her pretty face was not happy, but it was intimidating. Sir Buki, the Xiantian Fourth Fire Pool, is right behind the 9 peaks, guarded by the elders of the 9 peaks. In 3 days it will be my turn, so you can go to my room and rest first. Do you think it's okay? Let's go. When there were no more Spirit Bristle Holy Land disciples nearby, Feng Xian lowered her head and bowed. Jian Wushuang's eyes flickered, and he replied after a moment of silence, Sure. Then, she led Jian Wushuang to the 7th peak on the left. Before the two of them reached the 7th peak, they saw a burly man with a tower-like figure pacing back and forth at the foot of the mountain. He would stop from time to look outside. When he saw Feng Xian ruler walking with Jian Wushuang, a simple and honest smile appeared on his face and he ran over with large strides. Feng Xian, you went to the Fiery Sunstar area to fight for the Fire Yuan fruit. Are you alright? A look of loathing appeared in ruler Feng Xian's eyes when she saw the towering man. She coldly replied, Elder Shu Mountain, if something happened to me, would you still be able to see me? The Iron Tower-like man who was called Elder Shu Mountain was stunned when he heard this. He scratched the back of his head in embarrassment and said, Feng Xian, you're right. Ruler Feng Xian's expression was cold. After making a sound of acknowledgement, she said, Move aside. I want to return to the peak first. Elder Shu Mountain nodded. Just as he dodged to the side and was about to ask Feng Xian to move aside, his expression suddenly changed. Hold on. What's going on? Ruler Feng Xian's footsteps faltered, and her brows furrowed. Shu Mountain, what do you want now? The honest smile on the elder's face slowly disappeared. He looked at Jian Wushuang with an unfriendly gaze and said in a deep voice, Feng Xen, who is this guy? There was no trace of the simple and honest look on his face. Ruler Feng Xian's expression changed slightly when she heard this question. She felt a headache coming on as she thought, I knew that nothing good would come out of meeting this silly boy. After taking a deep breath, she said with a calm expression, This is an old friend who was specially invited by me to meet with me. Is there a problem? Old friend? A gathering? Elder Ba Shan squinted his eyes and a glint of light flashed across his green bean-like eyes. He sized up Jian Wushuang and asked coldly, Kid, let me ask you, what is your relationship with Elder Feng Xian? Also, the 7th peak is filled with women. Why are you going there? As soon as she finished speaking, Ruler Feng Xian looked at Jian Wushuang and gave him a meaningful look, hoping that he would agree with her. Jian Wushuang looked at him indifferently and said calmly, What does it have to do with you? What does it have to do with me? The elder from Shu Mountain laughed in anger. He said, Brat, Elder Feng Xian is the Tao companion that the Holy Lord was prepared to give me. Do you think this has anything to do with me? Hearing this, Jian Wushuang was about to speak again when she raised her eyebrows and said with a frosty face, Enough, Shu Mountain, let alone the fact that we haven't become Tao companions. Even if we did, you're not allowed to interfere in my personal affairs. Then, she grabbed Jian Wushuang's sleeve. Sir Buki, let's go. Ruler Feng Xian no longer paid any attention to Elder Shu Mountain. She held Jian Wushuang's hand and hurried toward the 7th peak. Behind the two, the face of the elder from Shu Mountain, who had been knocked away by Feng Xian, instantly turned ashen. He glared at Jian Wushuang and Ruler Feng Xian's back and clenched his fists so hard that they made cracking sounds. Cheap woman, just you wait. This lord will make you submit to me sooner or later. A sinister look appeared on Elder Shu Mountain's face. He watched Jian Wushuang and Feng Xian's backs for a moment before he snorted and left. When Elder Shu Mountain had walked far away, Feng Xian ruler, who was halfway up the mountain, finally heaved a long sigh of relief. She hurriedly let go of Jian Wushuang's sleeve and said in fear and trepidation, Your Excellency Buki, I had no choice but to offend you just now. Please punish me. The scene of Jian Wushuang killing everyone in the Fiery Sun Star area was still vivid in his mind. She was afraid that Jian Wushuang would start a massacre in the Spirit Jade Holy Land if he was unhappy. If that was the case, no one in the vast Spirit Jade Star area would be able to stop Jian Wushuang. It's fine. Jian Wushuang smiled and asked casually, Ruler Feng Xian, that elder from the mountains just now was your Tao companion? Ruler Feng Xian couldn't help but sigh. Helplessly, she said, I can't say I'm a Tao companion. It's just that Sir Holy Master acted on his own accord and betrothed me to him. A complicated look appeared on her face as she spoke. Jian Wushuang nodded and didn't ask any more questions. For him, he only needed to enter the innate 4th fire pool 3 days later and take the innate 4th fire. As for the love and hatred between the two, he didn't want to know, nor was he interested. The 7th peak was millions of feet high. The two of them chatted as they walked up. They didn't walk fast and only reached the peak after the time for one incense stick to burn. The 7th peak was just as the elder from Shu Mountain had said. As long as they could see the disciples, they were all valiant and heroic-looking female disciples. When they saw that the usually cold Elder Feng Xian had actually brought a man into the 7th peak, their expressions were instantly filled with shock. Who's that man? Could it be Elder Feng Xian's old flame? No wonder Elder Feng Xian has been so reluctant to accept Elder Shu Mountain. In terms of looks, this man is indeed much better than the boorish Elder Shu Mountain. It's just that his cultivation level seems to be a little lower. A 2nd stage ruler? Elder Feng Xian is a supreme ultimate ruler. This man isn't worthy of her. One mosquito-like discussion after another rang out, causing Feng Xian's face to instantly flush red. So noisy. Don't you need to cultivate? You're here gossiping. Ruler Feng Xian's face turned grim as she spoke in a harsh voice. Immediately, the female disciples of the Spirit Bristle Holy Land were shocked and quickly scattered. After doing all that, Ruler Feng Xian stole a glance at Jian Wushuang. When she saw that Jian Wushuang's expression was normal, and there were no fluctuations in his emotions, she could not help but sigh in relief. However, for some reason, she felt a little disappointed. After making a few turns, she led Jian Wushuang to a secluded hut with red walls and green tiles. The door was filled with purple bamboos. She said, "Sir Buki, this is my room. You can rest here. I'll give an order later to not let anyone come near and disturb you. 3 days later, when I'm on duty in the innate fourth fire pool, I'll lead you into the innate fourth fire pool." Yes. Jian Wushuang nodded without any change in his expression. Then, Sir Buki, please have a good rest here. I have to report to the sect master about what happened in the fiery sun star area. As soon as she finished speaking, she was afraid that Jian Wushuang would overthink, so she quickly added, "Sir Buki, don't worry, I won't tell anyone about you. Go on." Jian Wushuang waved his hand to show that he was fine, and then gently pushed open the wooden door of the quiet house. As he pushed open the wooden door of the quiet house, a faint orchid fragrance assailed his nose. Jian Wushuang's expression was normal. He found a place to sit down cross-legged and began to refine the ancient bronze cauldron. He sank into the ancient bronze cauldron. In the chaotic world inside, the fourth fire chi and the second wood chi were spreading like two polar forces. They were sticking to each other and spreading. 3 days passed in the blink of an eye. For Jian Wushuang, these 3 days were ordinary, but for the entire universe, they were earth-shattering. With the Divine Life Palace and the Dragon Tribe as the leaders, the unprecedented war between many forces had finally come to an end. No one had ever thought that the battle that had started with Jian Wushuang and the Tarot Divine Sword would drag down so many top forces. In the beginning, it was only a war between the Divine Life Palace and the Dragon Tribe. Later, with the entrance of Cosmos Temple, the situation was one-sided, and the Divine Life Palace had no chance to breathe. Just as the entire universe was sighing for the Divine Life Palace, Heart Slayer, Red Ear, and Purple-Haired Supreme from the 9 Emperor Pavilion had arrived. Suddenly, the situation changed again. The Divine Life Palace and the 9 Emperor Pavilion joined forces to fight against the Dragon Clan and Cosmos Temple. If that was the case, it would be fine. No one would have thought that the 4 great powers that had previously declared war on the Divine Life Palace, the Blood Sky Hall, the Great Void Godly Palace, the Great Sun Divine Kingdom, and the Scarlet Sun Divine Kingdom would charge out again and deal the Divine Palace a fatal blow. In this battle, the Divine Life Palace had suffered countless losses, and the White Tiger Supreme, one of the 5 lead Supremes, had fallen. On that day, the Great Tao wailed, and heaven and earth wept together. Under the attack of the 4 top forces, the Divine Life Palace once again suffered a disastrous decline. Supreme Giant Axe, who had been shining brilliantly on the battlefield, was seriously injured by the sneak attack of 5 top Supreme Masters and was forced to leave. The Divine Life Palace had lost 2 generals in a row, and their fighting spirit was extremely low. Just as the Divine Life Palace was in danger, the situation on the battlefield changed again. The 7 divine swords came from the distant starry sky. The sword chi swept across the starry sky for 30,000 feet, and the sword light froze millions of states in the universe. The Starry Sky Sword Sect was here. The current sect leader of the Starry Sky Sword Sect, the Martial Sword Immortal, was one of the unrivaled supremes. After the Tarot Swordmaster, she was the first female sword god in the world. After the Martial Sword Immortal entered the arena, the situation reversed once again. He slaughtered 3 major dragon tribes in a row and forced the Hall Master of Cosmos Temple to retreat continuously. On that day, the sword chi shot up to the sky, and the majestic and sharp golden sword light cut in all directions of the untainted land, turning the entire universe into sword shadows. The number of supreme martial artists that had died in her hands was no less than 5. The Dragon Clan, Cosmos Temple, and the 4 great forces were all terrified. Even so, the gap between the 2 supreme martial artists was still too big. Just as the Divine Life Palace was continuously shrinking its defensive perimeter and the sect-protecting formation was about to be broken, Supreme Martial Artist Guy Fu, who was so old that he looked like a human, finally took out the Divine Life Palace's final trump card. It was the supreme glory that the Lord of the Divine Life Palace had bestowed upon them when they had participated in the Battle of the Catastrophe. For that glory, the ancestors of the Divine Life Palace had suffered countless casualties, and Supreme Master Gai Fu had been injured to this day. Even the Palace Master of the Divine Life Palace had disappeared in the galaxy of the universe, without any news. This supreme glory that bloomed in blood was enough to take the next disaster for the Divine Life Palace. That Lord had made his move. With that Lord's attack, this battle had come to an end. The scale of this war was huge, and many top forces participated. The situation was reversed so quickly that it was rare and soul-stirring. Countless races in the universe who watched the war side and were destined to be recorded in history. However, the most regretful thing was that Jian Wushuang, who should have been the protagonist of the battle, did not show his face at all. After some people's inquiries, they found out that Jian Wushuang, who had caused the shocking war, had been driven out of the Divine Life Palace long ago and had now wandered to an unknown place. As a result, the battle with the Divine Life Palace ended, and a reward for Jian Wushuang began. On that day, the dragon race that had retreated to the Dead Star area in the extreme north made another announcement to the universe. Whoever killed Jian Wushuang would be rewarded with the status of an outer disciple of the Dragon Clan and would enjoy the eternal protection of the Dragon Clan. After the Dragon Clan, the 4 major forces and Cosmos Temple also responded. The one who kills Jian Wushuang will be rewarded with billions of universe origin stones. Whoever kills Jian Wushuang will be rewarded with the resources of 5-star areas. Whoever kills Jian Wushuang will be rewarded with 5 upper-grade supreme treasures, 10 top-grade divine medicines, and a supreme martial artist's full-force attack. All of a sudden, the name Jian Wushuang became a hot name in the universe again. Many second-rate powers and independent supreme cultivators took action to search for Jian Wushuang in the universe. Jian Wushuang's name no longer represented a person, but a treasure and a great fortune. The bounty on Jian Wushuang had become the most valuable bounty in the universe since the beginning of time. At the same time, in the desolate area of the universe, in the 7th peak of the declining Spirit Bristle Holy Land, Jian Wushuang slowly opened his eyes. 3 days had passed, and today was the day Jian Wushuang and ruler Feng Xian had agreed to go to the innate 4th fire pool. Do. There was a knock on the door, and then a respectful and gentle voice was heard. I won't abandon you, sir. Ruler Feng Xian called out softly from outside the door. They're here. Jian Wushuang nodded, stood up, and put away the ancient bronze cauldron. When he walked out of the room, he found that ruler Feng Xian had been waiting for him for quite some time. Lord Unforsaken, shall we set off? Ruler Feng Xian asked. All right, he said. Jian Wushuang nodded, then followed Feng Xian to the innate 4th fire pool. The innate 4th fire pool was located on the back of the planet occupied by the Spirit Bristle Holy Land, which was quite far away from the 7th peak. Sir Buki, the innate 4th fire pool is an important weapon of our Spirit Bristle Holy Land. The security is very strict. However, I know a secret passage that can allow you to enter quietly, Ruler Feng Xian said with a smile. Then, he led Jian Wushuang to the secret passage. After a few days of interaction, although she and Jian Wushuang did not talk much, she had more or less understood Jian Wushuang's character. She found that although Jian Wushuang was quick to kill, as long as they got along well, Jian Wushuang was not a narrow-minded person who was fickle in emotions. Therefore, she was not as reserved as before when facing Jian Wushuang. The two of them chatted as they traveled, and the atmosphere was quite harmonious. Sir Buki, have you been paying attention to the big event in the universe recently? Ruler Feng Xian asked with a smile. Something big? What's the big deal? Jian Wushuang raised his eyebrows and asked. Don't you know? It's the great war between the Divine Life Palace and the Dragon Clan. What? Ruler Feng Xian asked in surprise. The great war between the Divine Life Palace and the Dragon Clan had swept across the entire universe. Almost everyone in the universe knew about this war. Hearing this, Jian Wushuang's heart skipped a beat. He had been on his way without stopping after leaving the Divine Life Palace, so he really didn't know much about the battle in the Divine Life Palace. However, this did not mean that Jian Wushuang had forgotten about the war that had started because of him. In the entire universe, no one was more eager to know the outcome of the war than he was, and no one was more eager to participate in the war than he was. Taking a deep breath, Jian Wushuang suppressed the anxiety in his heart and made himself look normal. Then, he asked calmly, "What happened to that great battle?" "Of course," Ruler Feng Xian replied with a smile. "Sir Buki, that war is over." Speaking of which, the Divine Life Palace really is quite tenacious. Despite the combined efforts of so many top-class factions, they still managed to hold their own for so long. Hearing this, Jian Wushuang's heart skipped a beat. Judging from his tone, could it be that the Divine Life Palace could not hold on any longer? Immediately, Jian Wushuang suppressed his trembling thoughts and forced a smile on his face. "Tell me in detail." Ruler Feng Xian thought for a moment, then nodded. "All right, but I don't know much either. It's just some of the most widely circulated news in the universe." She slowly began to talk about the battle in the Divine Life Palace. She was talking to herself. When she mentioned the heavy casualties of the Divine Life Palace, she didn't notice that Jian Wushuang's face had long become sorrowful. Speaking of which, the White Tiger Supreme of the Divine Life Palace was really powerful. He fought 3 top-tier Supremes alone and even killed one of them before he died, perishing together with them. Jian Wushuang clenched his fists so tightly that his nails dug into his flesh that they turned red without him noticing. He hadn't spent much time with the White Tiger Supreme Master, but in his impression, the White Tiger Supreme Master was extremely fond of fighting. At the same time, he was a straightforward and generous Supreme Master. He had once saved his life with the help of the Supreme Giant Axe and the others. Unexpectedly, even the White Tiger Supreme had fallen in this battle. After that, Supreme Giant Axe was ambushed by the 5 top Supreme Martial Artists and was seriously injured. If not for the Blood Wave Supreme's timely assistance, he would have followed in the footsteps of White Tiger Supreme. Jian Wushuang felt a sense of sorrow as Ruler Feng Xian continued to speak. Although Supreme Giant Axe was a man of few words, Jian Wushuang could feel his love and care for him. In Jian Wushuang's opinion, Supreme Giant Axe was only second to Blood Wave Supreme in the Divine Life Palace. After taking 3 deep breaths, Jian Wushuang finally managed to suppress the throbbing thoughts in his heart. She was only an ordinary ruler in the desolate regions of the universe, so she didn't know much. She only knew that the war had suddenly ended at the end, and Supreme Being Gai Fu had fallen into a deep sleep. Supreme White Tiger has fallen. Supreme Giant Axe is dying from his injuries. Supreme Gai Fu is in deep sleep. Even more disciples of the Divine Life Palace have died. Jian Wushuang felt as if there was a huge stone pressing on his heart. It was exceptionally heavy. The entire Divine Life Palace was almost destroyed because of him. The Dragon Clan, Cosmos Temple, the Great Sun Divine Kingdom, the Scarlet Sun Divine Kingdom. I, Jian Wushuang, am ashamed of the Divine Life Palace. Taking a deep breath, Jian Wushuang made a decision. The Dragon Clan, Cosmos Temple, the Great Sun Divine Kingdom, the Scarlet Sun Divine Kingdom, the Great Void Temple, the Blood Sky Palace. I, Jian Wushuang, will remember this. Today I, Jian Wushuang, make a great promise. In this life, if I don't destroy the 6 forces, I'm not a human. The sorrow faded and waves of killing intent were suppressed by Jian Wushuang, surging in his chest. No, Sir Buki, what's wrong? What's going on? Feng Xian, who had been talking to Jian Wushuang, was shocked when she saw Jian Wushuang's cold expression. Jian Wushuang took a deep breath and his expression returned to normal. He said lightly, "I'm fine." Ruler Feng Xian didn't dare to ask any more questions. She nodded and continued to lead Jian Wushuang toward the innate 4th fire pool. Not long after, a large lake appeared in front of Jian Wushuang. "Sir Buki," Ruler Feng Xian said, "the passage to the connate 4th fire pond is in that lake." Jian Wushuang nodded. Without much consideration, he took a step forward and suddenly shot toward the lake. After a muffled sound, ripples spread on the surface of the lake, and Jian Wushuang disappeared. Ruler Feng Xian didn't stay on the lake for too long. She also left, heading off in another direction. What she didn't notice was that after the time it took for an incense stick to burn, a tall and burly man in black took a step out and revealed his figure from the void. Cheap woman, do you think you're the only one who knows about the passage to the innate fourth fire pool? Humph, you actually colluded with outsiders to steal the innate fourth fire chi from the sect. I'll report this matter to the Holy Master and see how you deal with it. And that brat, you dare to come to my spirit bristle holy land to steal the innate fourth fire chi, you're dead. This tall and burly man had a pair of beady eyes, and his face was filled with ruthlessness. He was none other than Elder Shu Mountain, who had followed them all the way here. A fierce light flashed in his eyes. After thinking for a moment, he decided to turn around and leave to report this matter to the Spirit Bristle Holy Land's Holy Lord. Gulp. Suddenly, a circle of ripples appeared on the calm lake. Boom! Immediately after, the entire surface of the lake exploded. A huge hand formed from a towering divine power broke out of the lake and grabbed at Elder Shu Mountain. This! Elder Shu Mountain's expression changed drastically. He raised his hand and unleashed a sacred art, blasting it toward the huge hand. Bang! However, when Elder Shu Mountain's divine art landed on the huge hand, it was like an egg smashing into a rock, instantly shattering. Immediately after, the huge hand pressed down and grabbed Elder Shu Mountain ruthlessly, pulled him back and dragged him into the lake. Gulp. The surface of the lake returned to its calm state, as if nothing had happened. At the bottom of the lake, Elder Shu Mountain looked at Jian Wushuang in fear and said with trembling lips, "You? Who are you? What do you want to do? Be smarter in your next life, and don't be so curious." Jian Wushuang looked at him and with a squeeze of his hand, he crushed the elder into powder, killing him in both body and soul. After doing all this, Jian Wushuang's expression was indifferent, as if he had just done something insignificant. Jian Wushuang looked down at the other side of the lake. There was a whirlpool that looked like a wormhole. From the whirlpool, hot air was spurting out. This should be the passage to the innate fourth fire pool. Jian Wushuang took a heavy step forward and shot toward the whirlpool like a cannonball, leaving a long trail of white waves at the bottom of the lake. Gulp! The whirlpool was a long and narrow passage. After Jian Wushuang plunged into the whirlpool, he continued to shoot forward. Gradually, he felt the surrounding lake water getting hotter and hotter. There was even a trace of fire in front of him. After an unknown amount of time, as if he had passed through the hyperthermal layer, Jian Wushuang instantly broke out of the water and was shocked by the scene in front of him. After passing through the narrow passage, the field of vision in front of him suddenly widened. A huge furnace and fire pool appeared in front of him. This smelting furnace's fire pool was at least 30,000 meters in size and was hidden deep underground. Countless blood-red flames that were as viscous as water were constantly emerging and burning the void. This is all Xiantian fourth fire chi. Jian Wushuang was overjoyed. He had only absorbed a finger-sized second with chi to awaken the ancient bronze cauldron. Then, he absorbed a fist-sized fourth fire chi to further improve the cauldron. But now, if this ocean-like innate fourth fire was completely absorbed by the ancient bronze cauldron, how much would it grow? Jian Wushuang's eyes flickered and the ancient bronze cauldron in his interspatial ring shook violently like never before. Scatter! Jian Wushuang opened his right hand and made a grabbing motion at the smelting furnace and fire pool. In an instant, countless divine power gushed out from his hand and formed a huge sealed space in the innate fourth fire pool. After that, Jian Wushuang stopped suppressing the cauldron and let it fly out of his interspatial ring. Whoosh! In an instant, the ancient bronze cauldron floated in the air and spun rapidly, letting out a few long howls. In the next moment, the ancient bronze cauldron seemed to have turned into a monarch of fire. Like a whale sucking in water, countless connate fourth fire chi rushed out of the pool and quickly poured into the ancient bronze cauldron. 1, 2, 3. In the blink of an eye, countless Xiantian fourth fire chi interwove with each other and came from all directions, with the ancient bronze cauldron as the center. He poured it into the ancient bronze cauldron. They were densely packed, covering the sky and the sun, and were mighty. Seeing this, Jian Wushuang blinked his eyes. The ancient bronze cauldron wouldn't absorb all the innate fourth fire qi here, would it? One had to know that this innate fourth fire qi was the foundation of the spirit bristle Holy Land's cultivation. Forget it. I don't care anymore. Jian Wushuang shook his head and sat down with his legs crossed. He slowly closed his eyes and divine power gushed out of his arms to refine the ancient bronze cauldron. 3 years had passed. Outside the innate fourth fire pool, ruler Feng Xian quietly sat there in the lotus position, her brows slightly furrowed. She sometimes lowered her head to look at the sealed innate fourth fire pond, and sometimes raised her head to look into the distance. There was a touch of anxiety on her face that could not be resolved. It's been 3 years. Why hasn't Sir Buki come out yet? Ruler Feng Xian looked a little worried. It had been 3 years since Jian Wushuang had entered the innate fourth fire pool. During that time, she had not seen any trace of Jian Wushuang, but she could feel that the fourth fire qi in the innate fourth fire pool was decreasing at a visible rate. She couldn't help but feel nervous. If Jian Wushuang had only absorbed a little bit of innate fourth fire qi, it wouldn't have mattered. She could have brought Jian Wushuang here and then left quietly without anyone noticing. However, if Jian Wushuang absorbed too much, the result would be very different. This innate fourth fire pool was the innate fourth fire qi that the spirit bristle Holy Land had accumulated over tens of thousands of chaos cycles. Even as an elder of the spirit bristle Holy Land, she had to report to the sacred land's master if she wanted to use even a little bit of innate fourth fire qi. However, in the 3 years that she had been guarding the innate fourth fire pond, the innate fourth fire qi that the innate fourth fire pond had consumed was the amount that the entire spirit bristle Holy Land had consumed for several chaos cycles. With such a huge consumption, once the matter was exposed, even if she was crushed to death, she would not be able to bear the responsibility. Just as she was feeling uneasy, she suddenly heard a series of hurried footsteps behind her. Who is it? Ruler Cherished Heart instantly felt his heart clench. Elder Feng Xian, it's me. Sir Holy Master sent me here to obtain some innate fourth fire qi. A boy with a gourd in his hand walked in. When Ruler Feng Xian saw this, she couldn't help but relax. Fortunately, he was only a servant of the Sacred Lord. And give me the gourd. You can just wait for me here, Ruler Feng Xian said, pretending to be calm. All right, then I'll have to trouble you, Elder Feng Xian. The small child grinned. It's no trouble at all. Ruler Feng Xian chuckled, then took the gourd and thrust it into a fist-sized hole. Instantly, an endless stream of fourth flame qi began to pour in, filling the gourd. Seeing that everything was fine, the boy casually said, Elder Feng Xian, the Holy Master wants to ask me something. Has anything happened to the innate fourth fire pool recently? Ruler Feng Xian's heart trembled when she heard this. She didn't turn her head and forced a smile. I'm personally guarding this place, so what could possibly happen? The child nodded, not noticing the change in her tone. He casually said, Elder Feng Xian, do you know where Elder Shu Mountain went? Recently, the Holy Master has been looking for him. So he's been searching the entire Holy Land but hasn't seen him. Oh? The Shu Mountain is gone. Ruler Feng Xian raised an eyebrow. That's right. Speaking of which, Elder Shu Mountain has disappeared for quite some time now. Ever since you returned from your mission, everyone has only seen him once, and not once. Perhaps he went to find a place to cultivate in seclusion? Ruler Feng Xian's heart trembled. For some reason, she had a faint feeling that the news about Elder Shu Mountain had to do with Jian Wushuang. It should be. The boy didn't suspect anything. A few moments later, Feng Xian handed the gourd to the boy, who immediately thanked her and waved his hand. Elder Feng Xian, I won't stay here any longer. Sir Holy Master is still waiting for the fourth fire qi. Take care. Then I won't see you out. A few moments later, the boy left, allowing Feng Xian to let out a long sigh of relief. Then, she looked down at the sealed gate of the innate fourth fire pit again. More and more worry in her eyes. There were still 7 years left before the shift would start again. At that time, the decrease in the fourth fire chi in the innate fourth fire pool would definitely be discovered. In the blink of an eye, another 7 years had passed. Inside the innate fourth fire pool, the Xiantian fourth fire chi that was originally a vast ocean had already shrunk by a large degree. In 10 years, the Xiantian fourth fire chi in the Xiantian fourth fire pool had decreased by at least 70%. The ancient bronze cauldron floated in the air like a giant taotai, devouring large amounts of innate fourth fire chi tirelessly. Whoosh! 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 The bronze cauldron floated in the air, spinning. In an instant, streams of innate fourth fire chi as thick as a finger shot out of the pool like small snakes, then automatically poured into the ancient bronze cauldron and were completely devoured and refined. For a whole 10 years, the ancient bronze cauldron had been absorbing the innate fourth fire chi. The innate fourth fire pool, which was originally bottomless, was now close to the bottom. After devouring a large amount of Xiantian fourth fire chi, the ancient bronze cauldron's appearance had changed again. The originally simple and unadorned cauldron was now covered in flame patterns. These flame patterns flowed and spread, turning the pitch-black cauldron into a demonic red. Bursts of explosive power emanated from the ancient bronze cauldron. Just one look at the power would make one shiver. If it wasn't for the divine power that Jian Wushuang had set up to seal the power, the entire spirit puppet sanctuary would have submitted to the power. In the void not far from the cauldron, Jian Wushuang sat cross-legged with his eyes closed. His black hair drooped down like an ancient statue. In the past 10 years, his refining speed of the cauldron had never been faster. He had refined 30% of the cauldron. He could even try to control the innate fourth fire chi in the bronze cauldron, as well as the tiny wisp of innate second wood chi. What kind of concept was this? Since the ancient times, no one had ever heard of anyone who could control the innate five elements chi. What was the Xiantian realm? It was the highest level of energy in the universe, formed by chaos and the heavenly Tao. This kind of innate five elements chi could be used to assist cultivation, to comprehend, and to create one's own acquired power of five elements. For example, the previous five elements Divine Lord and the current Spirit Bristle Holy Land used it this way. However, it was impossible to control the innate five elements chi directly. Or even if there was, Jian Wushuang had never heard of it. It'll probably take a few more days for the innate fourth fire energy in this innate fourth fire pool to be completely absorbed. And this ancient bronze cauldron will reach a state of saturation in the innate fourth fire chi of the five elements. Jian Wushuang slowly opened his eyes and a red light flashed in his eyes. At the same time, he made a decision in his heart. After he left the innate fourth fire pond, he would leave behind a large number of universe origin stones and law supreme treasures as compensation to the Spirit Bristle Holy Land. Jian Wushuang had never been a person who liked to take advantage of others. Since the innate fourth fire chi in the innate fourth fire pool had been completely absorbed by the ancient bronze cauldron, he would find a way to make up for it from other places. He had been fighting all over the years. First, he had obtained the Tarot treasure trove in the Tarot ruins. Then, he had plundered the ancient path of stars for tens of thousands of years. The heavenly materials and earthly treasures and universe origin stones he had accumulated were probably not even comparable to those of some top-tier supreme beings. Therefore, he was also confident that the treasures he left for the Spirit Bristle Holy Land would not be less valuable than this pool of innate fourth fire chi. Outside the innate fourth fire pool. What's going on? Ruler Vegetarheart began to pace back and forth anxiously. Today was the day of duty for the Xiantian fourth fire pond in the Spirit Bristle Holy Land. The elder who had come for the duty had been waiting outside for a long time. What should we do now? Ruler Xianxia turned to glance at the mirror, which displayed the total amount of connate fourth fire chi, and her face instantly filled with despair. On the surface of the profound light mirror, the Xiantian fourth fire chi was less than 10% left. There was only a shallow layer left. If the elder on duty saw her, she would know that she was finished. Xianxia, what the hell are you doing? How long do I have to wait outside? Outside the innate fourth fire pond, Elder Yen Fu, who was in charge of taking over the duty, said impatiently. Elder Yen Fu, it'll take a while. Please wait for a while. Yes. Ruler Feng Xian forced a smile onto her face as she loudly replied. Her voice was trembling. Hearing this, Elder Yen Fu snorted and said, Feng Xian, I don't care what you're up to. I'll give you the time it takes for an incense stick to burn. After that, I'll come in regardless of whether you agree or not. After he said this, the innate fourth fire pool was silent and no one replied. Dee-dee-dee-da. Time passed by slowly, and the time for one incense stick to burn was up. Elder Yen Fu, who was standing guard outside the innate fourth fire pond, couldn't wait any longer. His face suddenly turned gloomy. Feng Xian, I'd like to see what you're up to. Bang! In the next moment, he struck out his right palm and hit the bronze door outside the innate fourth fire pool. The innate fourth fire pond located in the Spirit Bristle Holy Land was like a circle that kept extending out, one ring after another. Each ring was guarded by the Spirit Bristle Holy Land's disciples, the Yen clan, and the core was the innate fourth fire pond located in the deepest part. And outside was the Elder Guard area where Ruler Feng Xian was. Boom! As Elder Yen Fu slammed his right palm onto the bronze gate, an earth-shaking explosion occurred. The intensity of the vibration was like an earthquake in the entire Spirit Bristle Holy Land. The earth cracked and the void shattered. It was like the end of the world. The wind howled, the world changed colors, and the world seemed to fall into chaos again. No words could describe the power of this vibration. This is... Elder Yen Fu's expression changed drastically. He knew that the earth-shaking force wasn't caused by his palm. Before he could think further, the next moment, a huge shock wave exploded from the fourth fire pool and spread out in all directions. It instantly shattered the ancient bronze door and hit Elder Yen Fu hard, sending him flying for nearly 10,000 feet. What is it? Elder Yen Fu fell to the ground and cried out in shock. In his horrified eyes, he saw a fiery red ancient bronze cauldron rush out from the core of the innate fourth fire pool and shoot into the distance. Then, his vision blurred and he saw a young man in a black robe with long hair and a beard. He did not look rough, but he was following closely behind the ancient bronze cauldron. You've grown a little bit of ability and now you want to escape? Jian Wushuang was so angry that he laughed. A cold light flashed in his eyes and he reached out his right hand to grab the escaping bronze cauldron. In the next moment, Jian Wushuang performed the secret skill of dragon blood. Boundless divine power that was tens of thousands of times stronger gushed out madly and suppressed the ancient bronze cauldron. Boom! 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 The cauldron shook violently, trying to break free from Jian Wushuang's grasp. However, Jian Wushuang's 5 well-defined fingers seemed to be made of molten iron. No matter how the cauldron struggled, it did not move and suppressed it. Sharp sword chi burst out from his fingers and struck the bronze cauldron. Gradually, the cauldron's struggle weakened. Jian Wushuang felt the huge power in the cauldron gradually disappear, and the coldness in his eyes became even more intense. Fortunately, he had refined 30% of the cauldron. Otherwise, he was afraid that he would not be able to suppress the cauldron that had absorbed the pond full of innate fourth fire chi with his own strength. Now you're being honest? Jian Wushuang snorted and put the cauldron back into his interspatial ring. Raising his head, Jian Wushuang was slightly stunned. The spirit puppet sanctuary under his feet had been reduced to ruins by the shock wave of the ancient bronze cauldron. Countless disciples of the Spirit Puppet Sanctuary were looking up at him in shock. Who are you? Elder Yen Fu sat in the middle of a broken wall and stared at Jian Wushuang in fear. Jian Wushuang let out an and felt a little guilty. Da-da-da-da-da. A series of hurried footsteps came from behind Jian Wushuang. He immediately saw Sacred Heart, who had also been battered by the shockwave, run over. I won't abandon you, sir. Ruler Feng Xian's chest heaved slightly as she panted. Elder Yen Fu's eyes narrowed. He looked at Jian Wushuang and then at Feng Xian. In the end, he seemed to understand something and his expression changed. All right, Feng Xian, you actually colluded with outsiders to enter the innate fourth fire pool. You're in big trouble. As soon as he finished speaking, he saw a stream of fire with a tail of flames shooting toward him from the 7 peaks of the spiritual spirals sect. Under the stream of fire, a sonic boom was set off. In just a few seconds, the flaming light appeared in front of everyone. The flames dissipated, revealing a dignified middle-aged man with a head full of red hair and 2 balls of fire in his eyes. "Sir Holy Master, greetings, Saint Lord." "Yes." The Spirit Bristle Holy Land disciples, Feng Xian ruler, and Elder Yen Fu immediately knelt down on one knee. This dignified middle-aged man was the Spirit Bristle Holy Land's current Holy Lord. At that moment, Spirit Bristle Divine Lord's face was ashen. She first looked at Jian Wushuang coldly before looking at ruler Feng Xian. "First, take me to the innate 4th fire pool." Ruler Feng Xian trembled at these words. No one understood the situation in the innate 4th fire pit better than she did. The Xiantian 4th fire that had been accumulated over tens of thousands of chaos cycles in the pool was now completely gone. She didn't dare to imagine what state Spirit Bristle Divine Lord would be in if she saw this scene. "Yes." Taking a deep breath, Sacred Heart braced himself and said. Then, Ruler Long Xian led Spirit Bristle Divine Lord toward the innate 4th fire pool. The innate 4th fire pond was hidden underground. 2 doors made of 10,000-year-old ice-cold Shen iron firmly sealed the innate 4th fire pond. At this moment, the 2 doors made of ice-cold Shen metal had been completely blown apart by the ancient bronze cauldron, revealing a huge hole. Numerous burning auras came out from the hole. Spirit Bristle Divine Lord's face was dark as she walked toward the hole. She only lowered her head to take a look. In an instant, Spirit Bristle Divine Lord felt as if she had fallen into an ice cellar, and her expression was completely stunned. "Sintan, where's Dinghua?" The next moment, Spirit Bristle Divine Lord's body trembled. Under his gaze, he saw that the innate 4th fire pond, which had originally stored a lot of innate 4th fire energy, was now empty. Not a single drop of innate 4th fire energy was left. "Where's the Xiantian 4th fire?" "Arg!" A heart-wrenching howl came from Spirit Bristle Divine Lord's mouth. Then, Spirit Bristle Divine Lord suddenly turned her head and looked at Ruler Feng Xian and Jian Wushuang with hatred. She was so angry that her body trembled. You all deserve to die." Boom! The aura of an unrivaled ruler exploded with Spirit Bristle Divine Lord as the center. Spirit Bristle Divine Lord was instantly enraged to the extreme. "You!" Ruler Feng Xian's hair immediately stood on end, and a thin layer of cold sweat appeared on her forehead. She was about to speak when Jian Wushuang took a step forward and stood in front of her. "Your mission is complete. Leave the rest to me." Jian Wushuang smiled at her and turned to look at Spirit Bristle Divine Lord. He said in a deep voice, "Spirit Bristle Divine Lord, things have come to this. Listen to me." "I said your grandma." Spirit Bristle Divine Lord's face turned green. She immediately took a step forward and grabbed Jian Wushuang. At this moment he was already in a rage. How could he listen to the second half of the sentence? Clang! A golden divine spear suddenly appeared in Spirit Bristle Divine Lord's hand. He took a step forward, and endless flames appeared around his legs as he stepped through the air. Every step he took left a flame mark in the air. "Go to hell!" In the next moment, Holy Lord Spirit Luan thrust forward, and the golden divine spear was aimed at Jian Wushuang's head. Countless flames spurted out from the tip of the divine spear. Seeing this, Jian Wushuang frowned slightly and jumped back to avoid the stab. At the same time, he said in a deep voice, "Spirit Bristle Divine Lord, calm down first." "I can't calm down." Spirit Bristle Divine Lord's eyes were bloodshot as she panted. If there weren't so many disciples present, she would have cried. The innate 4th fire pool was the foundation of the Spirit Bristle Holy Land for tens of thousands of chaos cycles. Now, it had all been used by Jian Wushuang. Who could stand this? After Spirit Bristle Divine Lord finished roaring, she charged forward again. The blazing golden spear in her hand was like a storm hitting a banana leaf or like big and small beads falling on a jade plate. She instantly brandished thousands of spears and stabbed Jian Wushuang. Shwa shwa shwa. Countless spear shadows overlapped and interweaved together. Every spear thrust was like a roaring fire dragon, terrifying to the extreme. Jian Wushuang tilted his head slightly. He dodged the spear shadows easily. Until now, Jian Wushuang thought that it would be best to resolve this matter peacefully. After all, he was the one who took away the foundation of the Spirit Bristle Holy Land first. However, Jian Wushuang's continuous retreat didn't make Spirit Bristle Divine Lord have any intention of stopping. Instead, the fight became more intense. In the end, every spear attack of Spirit Bristle Divine Lord was headed straight for Jian Wushuang's Mingmen. "You're not done." Jian Wushuang squinted his eyes and his face turned cold. "All right, since you won't listen to me, I'll beat you into submission first, then I'll tell you." Innate Divine Power. Original Universe. PFFF. In an instant, a boundary power descended on the entire scene. Under the power of the boundary, Spirit Bristle Divine Lord's aura weakened rapidly, while Jian Wushuang's aura rose rapidly. Gradually, Spirit Bristle Divine Lord's speed slowed down. The next moment, he thrust his spear forward and the raging flame golden spear in his hand was caught by Jian Wushuang. "What? You?" Spirit Bristle Divine Lord was stunned for a moment before she let out an angry roar. Divine power surged in her body as she pulled her hands back. He did not move. He pulled again. He still didn't move. "What's this?" Spirit Bristle Divine Lord's body stiffened, and she slowly raised her head to look at Jian Wushuang. He saw Jian Wushuang holding the blazing divine spear in his right hand and looking down at him expressionlessly. Jian Wushuang's divine power was tens of thousands of times greater than that of Spirit Bristle Divine Lord. With the help of the original universe, the gap between him and Spirit Bristle Divine Lord had reached an incredible level. "Are you done?" Jian Wushuang spat out these words indifferently. Spirit Bristle Divine Lord's face turned red, and she stuttered, unable to say a word. "Since you've fought enough, can we have a good talk?" With a calm expression, Jian Wushuang released his grip on the golden spear. In that instant, Spirit Bristle Divine Lord, who didn't have time to stop her power, almost fell from the sky. Spirit Bristle Divine Lord, who was holding the blazing flame golden spear tightly, smiled angrily again. "Humph, you stole my Holy Land's heritage, and now you have the nerve to tell me to talk nicely? If you want this sect master to speak properly, then receive this move of mine first. Secret skill, True Sevenfold Flame. Die!" Spirit Bristle Divine Lord shouted as she rubbed her hands together. In an instant, the golden spear disappeared and turned into a pool of golden flames. As soon as the golden flame appeared, it turned the entire sky and land into a sea of fire as if it was burning the sky. Jian Wushuang, who was in the sea of fire, was like a small boat in the raging sea, as if he would be swallowed by the sea of fire at any time. "Go to hell. You're courting death." Spirit Bristle Divine Lord grinned and pulled with her hands again. The golden flames instantly turned into a lifelike golden fire dragon. Each scale was shining, and it stepped on flames. "Go!" Spirit Bristle Divine Lord roared and pushed forward. In an instant, the golden fire dragon roared and pounced toward Jian Wushuang. "You're so stubborn." Jian Wushuang shook his head. He had wanted to use Divine General Wuxia to cut the fire dragon into pieces, but he seemed to have thought of something. Instead of taking out Wuxia Divine's sword, he turned his right hand and an ancient bronze cauldron appeared in his hand. The ancient bronze cauldron was suppressed by Jian Wushuang's divine power. It had recovered from its original power and was like a black iron lump, not eye-catching at all. "It's a good time to test your power." Jian Wushuang squinted his eyes and threw the ancient bronze cauldron at the fire dragon. However, Jian Wushuang was afraid that the cauldron would smash Spirit Bristle Divine Lord into ashes. So he controlled his power and only used less than 10% of the cauldron's power. Bang! The ancient bronze cauldron drew a parabola in the air and smashed into the mouth of the fire dragon formed by the true fire of sevenfold. Chi 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 chi. There was no resistance at all. Like a sledgehammer smashing tofu, the powerful fire dragon was directly shattered inch by inch, turning into countless fire stars that scattered. This wasn't the end. After the ancient bronze cauldron smashed the fire dragon, it spun and once again smashed towards Spirit Bristle Divine Lord. What the hell is this? What? Spirit Bristle Divine Lord was stunned. A black lump of metal rushed out of the countless sparks and kept enlarging in his eyes. Clang. In the end, the ancient bronze cauldron drew an extremely beautiful arc in the air and smashed straight into his head. What did I get hit by? This was the last thought that flashed through the mind of Spirit Bristle Divine Lord. Immediately, his vision turned black and he passed out. Whoosh! The unconscious Spirit Bristle Divine Lord fell to the ground, raising a cloud of dust. Holy Lord! You actually dared to kill the Holy Master? How dare you? Countless Spirit Bristle Holy Land disciples and 9 peak elders roared. However, although they looked hesitant and eager, none of them dared to step forward and face Jian Wushuang. Jian Wushuang ignored them and looked at the cauldron. He raised his eyebrows and his eyes lit up. This was the first time he had used the bronze cauldron against an enemy. He had tried his best to control the power of the cauldron and only used 10% of its original power. He didn't expect that even so, Spirit Bristle Divine Lord's divine body was on the verge of collapse, and her divine soul was directly blocked under the heavy blow. This was an invincible ruler. If he were to use the innate chi in the ancient bronze cauldron, how powerful would he be? It seems like the power of this cauldron is far beyond my imagination. Thinking of this, Jian Wushuang's eyes flickered and he had a lot of thoughts. After a while, Jian Wushuang stretched out his right hand and made a grabbing motion. Boundless divine power gushed out and he grabbed the ancient bronze cauldron back. He then put it into his interspatial ring. Don't worry, your holy master is fine. Jian Wushuang lowered his head and glanced at the people from Spirit Bristle Holy Land. Seeing Jian Wushuang's gaze, they shuddered. They had finally seen clearly that the dark object that had knocked their sect master out was an ancient bronze cauldron. Knocked unconscious by a cauldron? This was too fierce. A month passed. During this month, Jian Wushuang did not leave Spirit Bristle Holy Land. Instead, he quietly waited for Spirit Puppet Holy Lord to wake up. To Jian Wushuang, Spirit Bristle Holy Land was just an ordinary force that could be destroyed with a flip of his hand. However, Jian Wushuang, never liked to owe others anything. He had said before that he would give resources to compensate Spirit Bristle Holy Land, so he would naturally do as he said. At the top of the 7th peak of the Spirit Bristle Holy Land, there was a cliff that overlooked the entire Spirit Bristle Holy Land. Jian Wushuang sat on the edge of the cliff with his legs crossed, comprehending the great Tao in silence. Ruler Feng Xian stood behind Jian Wushuang respectfully like a servant. Ever since Jian Wushuang had defeated Spirit Bristle Divine Lord with one move using the ancient bronze cauldron a month ago, she had been completely convinced by Jian Wushuang. Sir Buki, Sir Holy Master has already woken up early this morning, Ruler Feng Xian said respectfully. Jian Wushuang's back was facing Feng Xian. He nodded and stood up. All right, let's go. Follow me to see him. Yes. After a while, Jian Wushuang saw Spirit Bristle Divine Lord in the Sect Master's Hall of Spirit Bristle Divine Land. Although Spirit Bristle Divine Lord's godly body was still covered in cracks and was still weak, her complexion had recovered a lot. However, his entire person was like a frosted eggplant. He looked dispirited and sighed in a low voice, as if he had aged decades. He looked at Jian Wushuang, who was walking into the hall step by step. The anger on his face had disappeared and was replaced by a touch of helplessness. Sir, you've already taken the innate 4th fire and I'm not your match. What else do you want? My temple is small and can't take any more trouble. Spirit Bristle Divine Lord said helplessly. Jian Wushuang smiled and said, Sir Holy Master, don't worry. I'm only here to make amends. Compensation. Spirit Bristle Divine Lord, who was originally depressed like a frosted eggplant, suddenly became energetic. She straightened her back and her eyes shone. Your Excellency, how do you plan to compensate me? Spirit Bristle Divine Lord's eyes lit up as she clicked her tongue. Jian Wushuang was speechless. If only Spirit Bristle Divine Lord had such an attitude earlier. After a pause, Jian Wushuang pondered for a while and said, 100 million universe origin stones, 50 top-tier divine herbs, 50 top-tier divine materials, and 10 top-tier law true treasures. Jian Wushuang spoke slowly. Every time he mentioned a compensation, Spirit Bristle Divine Lord's eyelids could not help but twitch. By the time he finished speaking, Spirit Bristle Divine Lord was already seeing stars. This, Spirit Bristle Divine Lord swallowed her saliva, and her arms trembled with excitement. 100 million universe origin stones were enough to buy dozens of star fields like the Spirit Bristle Holy Land in this desolate area of the universe. 50 top-tier divine herbs could nurture many ultimate rulers. There were also 50 top-tier divine materials and 10 top-tier law true treasures. The heavens had pity on him. In this huge Spirit Bristle Holy Land, only he, the Spirit Bristle Divine Lord, had a top-tier law true treasure. The Spirit Bristle Holy Land had been in decline for far too long. Anything of value in the Holy Land had long been plundered clean by other forces. This is enough to increase the strength of my Spirit Bristle Holy Land by several times. What? Spirit Bristle Divine Lord exclaimed. Jian Wushuang smiled and said, Spirit Bristle Divine Lord, even if the resources I'm offering aren't as good as the innate fourth fire chi in the pond, it's almost the same. What do you think? Spirit Bristle Divine Lord muttered to herself. Even if she didn't agree, what could she do? Good. Then it's a deal. Spirit Bristle Divine Lord gritted her teeth. Jian Wushuang nodded in satisfaction. Good. Jian Wushuang immediately handed over an interspatial ring to let Spirit Bristle Divine Lord settle the bill. Half a day later, Jian Wushuang bade farewell and left under the gazes of everyone from the Spirit Bristle Holy Land. Outside the Spirit Bristle Holy Land. Sir Buki, aren't you going to stay any longer? Ruler Feng Xian said with some reluctance. She did not know why, but during the time she followed Jian Wushuang, she had slowly formed a dependence on him, as well as an inexplicable feeling that even she herself was not clear about. I'm not staying. Jian Wushuang smiled at her. Then, Jian Wushuang cupped his hands at her and said, Don't send me off. We'll part ways here. As soon as he finished speaking, Jian Wushuang took a step with his right foot and suddenly turned into a flowing light, shooting into the distant starry sky like a small boat sailing into the sea of stars. Ruler Feng Xian looked at Jian Wushuang's back as he gradually disappeared into the horizon. A hint of melancholy appeared on her face. If she left today, she was afraid that they would never see each other again. In the vast sea of stars, Jian Wushuang was refining the ancient bronze cauldron while driving the universe boat toward the depths of the desolate universe. In the blink of an eye, 10,000 years had passed. In the past 10,000 years, Jian Wushuang kept changing his name and appearance. He traveled in the wild areas of the universe and collected the innate 5 elements qi. After 10,000 years of collecting, he had already collected 4 of the innate 5 elements qi, which were the Yi Wood qi, the Di Fire qi, the Gung Metal qi, and the High Water qi. As long as he collected the 3rd Earth qi, he would be able to complete the collection of the innate 5 elements. The ancient bronze cauldron would also be truly opened. However, the difficulty of finding the innate earth element qi was much higher than the other 4 innate qi. Jian Wushuang had searched for 3,000 years, but he had not found any information about the innate earth qi. Therefore, Jian Wushuang slowed down and started to comprehend the great Tao. In these 10,000 years, he wandered around the secular world. Sometimes he was like a scholar traveling far away with books, sometimes like an old scholar, sometimes like a swordsman on horseback, watching hundreds of sects fighting for power, watching layers of forests being stained, watching the rise and fall of the tide, watching other people's lives. He saw the high-spirited youth, the steady middle-aged man, and the understanding of the world in old age. Jian Wushuang gradually realized that everything in life was decided by the heavens, just like reincarnation. However, the more Jian Wushuang looked at it, the more lost he became. What was Tao? It was like seeing a mountain as a mountain, but seeing a mountain as a mountain was not a mountain. Jian Wushuang had now entered a bottleneck state. However, Jian Wushuang knew that although he was lost, he was the closest to comprehending the great Tao. Once he truly glimpses the heavenly Tao, he would be like a reincarnated nirvana, truly soaring up and comprehending the true meaning of the great Tao. From there, he would be able to get a glimpse of the opportunity to become a supreme divine realm expert. In an unknown starfield, in a world called the Thousand Forest World, Jian Wushuang had turned into an old scholar with white hair and beard. He held a walking stick and walked on the official road outside the city with a slightly hunched body. Leng Rushuang walked next to him. She turned into an old woman with white hair and a wrinkled face. In the past 10,000 years, Leng Rushuang had finally broken through to the ultimate ruler realm. The two of them staggered forward like ordinary old men. No one would have thought that either one of them had the vast power to crush a planet with a casual pinch. Old hag, there's a tea stall in front. Let's go and rest. Jian Wushuang tilted his head slightly and looked at Leng Rushuang, who was standing beside him, and said with a smile, "All right, old swordsman." Leng Rushuang smiled back at him. She could not help but sigh. The two of them were both at the ultimate ruler realm and were immortal. It was probably impossible for them to grow old together. Now that they saw each other's appearance, it was not bad. The two of them did not walk quickly, just like the most ordinary old people. They held their crutches and trembled as they walked toward the tea stall in front. The martial power of the star realm was not high. In other words, in this entire star area, the strongest person was only at the principal's master realm. With Jian Wushuang's current strength, he could probably blow the star area up with a single breath. Walking into the tea stall, he saw that the owner of the tea stall was a charming middle-aged woman. At his knees was a child about 10 years old. He was waving a wooden sword and babbling some Jianghu slang that he had learned from God knows where. "What would you two like to drink?" The lady boss of the tea shop looked kind. When she saw Jian Wushuang and Leng Rushuang walk in, she did not dislike them because of their age. Instead, she respectfully pulled out the wooden chairs and helped them sit down. "Just some simple tea will do," Jian Wushuang said with a smile. "All right, please wait a moment." The lady boss used the cloth on her shoulder to wipe the fine sweat on her forehead. Then she turned around and went into the house to prepare. However, the boy with red lips and white teeth under the lady boss's knee stopped his sword dance. He was tired of it and his eyes rolled around. Then he trotted toward Jian Wushuang. "Grandpa, Grandma, where are you guys from?" Jian Wushuang looked at the strong-looking boy and found him quite interesting. After exchanging a look with Leng Rushuang, he jokingly replied, "Grandpa, Grandma, you came from beyond the heavens." "Beyond the heavens?" The boy was stunned. He blinked his bright eyes and asked, "Where is beyond the heavens?" "Oh, beyond the heavens?" Jian Wushuang thought for a while and replied with a smile, "It's a place that's very, very far from here. When night comes, you can look up at the sky and see the furthest star from you. That's where I came from." The boy pouted and shook his head. "Grandfather, you're talking nonsense. Mother told me that the stars in the sky are places that people can only go to after they die. My father is living on the star now." Hearing this, Jian Wushuang was dumbfounded. But when he heard the second half of the sentence, he could not help but sigh softly. He reached out his hand and rubbed the little boy's head. "You're so smart. You even saw through Grandpa's lie." When the little boy heard this, he immediately raised his head and snorted with pride. "Of course. Mother said that I'm the smartest child in the world." Hearing this, Jian Wushuang smiled and didn't say anything. As for the little boy, he was at the age where he was naturally playful, so how could he sit down? He picked up the wooden sword and danced for a while. After a while, he was tired of dancing and ran over again. He asked while panting, "Grandpa, you must have seen a lot of people since you came from far away. Do you think there are sword immortals in this world?" "Sword immortal?" Jian Wushuang was stunned. He thought for a moment, then nodded and replied with a smile, "Of course there is. Grandfather was once a sword immortal." "Ah? Grandpa, you're a sword immortal." The little boy's eyes suddenly widened. He sized up Jian Wushuang and asked with suspicion, "Grandpa, you're lying. Sword immortals all fly in the sky." Jian Wushuang laughed. "Grandpa, Didn't you say that I used to be a sword immortal? But now I'm old and can't fly anymore." Hearing this, Lung Rushuang burst into laughter. She had never thought that Jian Wushuang could be so innocent. However, she didn't say anything. As Jian Wushuang's wife, she was the only one who knew how much pressure Jian Wushuang, who had a bounty on his head and the Divine Life Palace had suffered a great calamity because of her, was under. If this could allow Jian Wushuang to relax for a short while, why not? Hearing Jian Wushuang's words, the little boy's big eyes were filled with disbelief, but he didn't know how to refute it. After thinking for a while, he straightened his neck and asked, Then, Grandpa, tell me how you became a sword immortal in the past and I'll believe you." "All right." Jian Wushuang nodded and then looked up at the sky. His old and turbid eyes flashed with a touch of nostalgia. "Then I'll have to start from a long, long time ago." As the sun set in the west, time gradually passed. Jian Wushuang picked out some interesting things to tell the little boy. Suddenly, the little boy's eyes widened, and his expression was wonderful. His heart was full of ups and downs, and he was full of longing. After a while, Jian Wushuang slowly stopped talking. He shook his head and smiled. "All right, let's stop here for today." The little boy only came back to his senses after a long time, as if he had just woken up from a dream. When he looked at Jian Wushuang again, his eyes were full of admiration. "Grandpa, let me tell you a secret. I'm practicing the sword so that I can become a sword immortal like you in the future." He tightly held the wooden sword in his hand, his eyes full of young hesitation. "As long as I persevere, I will," Jian Wushuang replied with a smile. The little boy was overjoyed when he heard Jian Wushuang's affirmation. He asked Jian Wushuang several times and only laughed foolishly when he got Jian Wushuang's affirmation. After a while, he rolled his eyes as if he had thought of something. He then asked curiously, "Grandpa, why did you practice the sword then?" "Me?" Hearing this, Jian Wushuang smiled. Just as he was about to answer, he suddenly froze. Why did he practice the sword in the first place? Jian Wushuang didn't say anything. He just looked up at the sky in a daze, and a myriad of thoughts surged in his heart. Everyone had their own reasons to become stronger, or rather, it was called obsession. With this obsession, he would be able to forge his own Tao without regret even if he died 10,000 times. Then what was his obsession? Jian Wushuang could answer this question. In the beginning, his obsession was to protect himself, to not be bullied, to find his father, Jian Nantian, and to survive in this world. Thus, as the other party became stronger and stronger, he muddle-headed and passed through one obstacle after another, making himself stronger and stronger. Now, he had become the most powerful existence in the entire universe, except for the Supremes. But he, Jian Wushuang, had never taken the initiative to become stronger. What should he do? No. Looking closely at all of his actions, it was actually just a counterattack to the pressure from all sides. Even now, he wanted to comprehend the Tao, collect the innate 5 elements Qi, and break through to the supreme divine realm. All of this was just to make himself stronger so that he could face the Dragon Clan and all the forces that wanted to suppress him. Then, if one day he, Jian Wushuang, became invincible in the universe and no one in the world could suppress him, would he stop cultivating? Was it going to stagnate? Jian Wushuang's eyes gradually revealed a hint of confusion. The divine power in his body started to become chaotic. "My husband." Seeing this, Lung Rushuang's expression changed slightly. She quickly waved her right hand and formed a ward, which wrapped her and Jian Wushuang. She knew that Jian Wushuang must have understood something and was now at the most critical stage. All she could do was to not let anyone disturb him. Inside the wizardry barrier, Jian Wushuang fell into an unprecedented state of confusion. It was as if he had fallen into the deep sea and was constantly sinking. He was completely lost. What was his Tao? Time flew by and 3 days passed. In the wizardry barrier, Jian Wushuang and Lung Rushuang seemed to have disappeared from the world. They were sitting in front of the tea stall, but no one could see or touch them. This naturally caused another wave of surprise. The little boy was extremely excited and repeatedly exclaimed, "Mother, I've met an immortal!" The lady boss was also stunned. Then, she quickly knelt on the ground and kowtowed 3 times, calling for the arrival of the Immortals. Jian Wushuang, who was in the ward, was in an extremely critical situation. Since ancient times, countless experts had failed to comprehend the great Tao, and then their Tao hearts had completely collapsed, turning them into walking corpses or human-shaped machines. Just as Jian Wushuang's Tao heart was about to collapse and he was about to follow in the footsteps of those people. Suddenly, a human face appeared in Jian Wushuang's consciousness. That was Xianxia. Jian Wushuang was in a strange state. His consciousness was blurry, as if he was in the deep sea 90,000 miles below. He could not use any of his destructive divine power and could only sink. It was as if there was a huge stone pressing on their chests, making it hard for them to breathe. What was Tao? This Tao wasn't a heavenly Tao, but a Tao that he had opened up himself. There were 3,000 great Taos, and everyone's Tao was different. Some people had the absolute confidence of I'm invincible, while some people had the unyielding determination of crawling forward despite all the difficulties in the world. Jian Wushuang closed his eyes and his mind was in chaos. Just as he was lost in the great Tao, a human face suddenly appeared in his chaotic consciousness. This face was Xianxia's. In an instant, it was as if a candle had been lit in the middle of a long night, and the dark world was filled with light. Master! Jian Wushuang suddenly woke up. In an instant, Jian Wushuang's mind was filled with countless thoughts. From the time he met Xianxia to the time when Xianxia protected him, the scenes of the past kept playing in his mind. This face was not an imprint that Xianxia had left in his mind. Instead, it was a bond that he had buried in the deepest part of his heart. It felt like an instant, but it also felt like 10,000 years had passed in the blink of an eye. Jian Wushuang's thoughts became clearer and clearer. After Xianxia, he saw more and more faces. Among these people, there was Jian Nantian, who had once protected him. There was also Supreme Bloodwave, who was willing to die for him. There was also Supreme Gaifu, who was cold on the outside but warm on the inside, who was willing to go to war with the entire universe for him. There were too many people who had paid a huge price to protect Jian Wushuang. One face after another appeared in Jian Wushuang's mind. At that moment, Jian Wushuang understood. As if the clouds had parted to reveal the bright moon, Jian Wushuang, who had been lost in the Tao, had completely woken up. Boom! In an instant, Jian Wushuang's eyes opened and countless divine lights flashed in his eyes. My Tao is to protect. I'm not only protecting myself, but I'm also protecting everyone who has protected me. I want to protect my master, Leng Rushuang, and the Divine Life Palace. A dragon has a reverse scale that will kill you upon contact. They are my reverse scales. Only by becoming stronger can I protect the people I want to protect. Only then can I protect myself. At that moment, Jian Wushuang's eyes were clear and filled with unquestionable determination. Then, Jian Wushuang's body changed. First of all, his divine power became purer and purer, like a piece of unpolished jade that had its impurities removed and became clear. The greatest difference between a ruler and a ruler was the quality of their divine power. The ruler's unique divine ruler power was the greatest reliance a ruler relied on to soar above the heavens, sit alone in the clouds, and look down on all living beings. As for Jian Wushuang, although his divine power did not break through to become ruler divine power, it was already far different from the divine power of a ruler. Then his aura also changed. His extremely strong and unyielding aura first began to surge, and then it began to transform in an unknown direction. The aura made Jian Wushuang look more transparent, purer, and clearer. It made his every move full of the charm of the great Tao. If anyone had noticed Jian Wushuang, they would have realized that he was no longer an individual, but the incarnation of the great Tao. He stared at Jian Wushuang as if he was staring at the truth of the great Tao. Time passed slowly. Jian Wushuang was immersed in the comprehension of Tao, and his comprehension of Tao progressed at a tremendous pace. At the same time, he began to advance toward the Supreme Being realm. In the blink of an eye, 60 years had passed. To cultivators, 60 years was just a snap of their fingers. However, to mortals, 60 years was more than half of their lives. It was enough to turn a child into a white-haired old man. Desolate region of the universe, an unknown star field, within the star world. Early in the morning, a simple tea stall on the official road outside the city had not yet opened. A skinny woodcutter with his white hair tied behind his head with a piece of wood walked over from the ridge beside the official road. He placed the hoe covered in yellow mud behind the door, then fetched a basin of cold well water to wash his face. He picked up the slightly yellowed white cloth next to the stove and placed it on his shoulder. He began to set up a tea stall outside the house. Not long after, the tea stall was set up, and it did not take much time. Because the tea stall was too simple, they moved a few wooden tables and chairs from the house and placed them outside the house. Then, they raised a stick and tied an apricot flag with the word D on the tip of the stick, and the tea stall was closed. Old Man Woodcutter had repeated this kind of thing for decades and was already familiar with it. Then he turned around and entered the house. He began to prepare some tea and miscellaneous food in case a tea guest came to his door later. What he didn't know was that not long after he turned around and entered the house, he had already entered the house. The air in the tea stall outside the house twisted, and a young man and a young woman appeared out of thin air. The young man on the left had a handsome and cold appearance. His black hair was let down, but his deep eyes were exceptionally clear, like the blue sky and the sea, as pure as unpolished jade. This person was Jian Wushuang, who had comprehended the great Tao. For a whole 60 years, Jian Wushuang was immersed in comprehending the great Tao. If he was like an unsheathed divine sword in the past, revealing his sharp edge and causing people to not dare to look at him directly, then the current him was like a distant mountain or a distant river. It was as if he had merged into the great Tao of heaven and earth, causing people to have a good impression of him. In these 60 years, no matter if it was his Shin power aura or his strength, they had all undergone earth-shaking changes. Although Jian Wushuang had yet to break through to the supreme realm, he was much stronger than before, and was only a step away from the supreme divine realm. The beautiful woman beside him was Leng Rushuang. Jian Wushuang had comprehended the great Tao for 60 years, and Leng Rushuang had been by his side, watching over him for 60 years. Now that Jian Wushuang had finally come out of seclusion, Leng Rushuang removed the ward. "Husband, you seem to be a little different." Leng Rushuang looked at Jian Wushuang from head to toe and said in surprise, "Is that so?" Jian Wushuang raised his eyebrows and then smiled. "What's different?" Leng Rushuang thought for a moment, shook her head and said, "I can't say for the time being. In any case, it just feels like there's no smoke or fire in the world. At first glance, it feels very close, but in fact, it feels very far away." Hearing this, Jian Wushuang was in deep thought. This was the influence of Tao. As he comprehended more about Tao, this temperament would become stronger. When did the two of you arrive?" Just then, the woodcutter walked out with a plate of pastries and miscellaneous food. He was slightly stunned when he saw Jian Wushuang and Leng Rushuang. "What?" Hearing that, Jian Wushuang looked at Elder Woodcutter and was slightly surprised. The old man was none other than the young boy with red lips and white teeth who had enjoyed his life and asked Jian Wushuang to tell him stories. He wanted to fight with swords in the pugilistic world and become a sword immortal. He did not expect that after he came out of seclusion, things had changed. The once naughty child had now become a white-haired old man. The owner of the tea house, Nian, who still had his charm, had probably turned into a pile of soil. Jian Wushuang looked at this person again. He no longer had the innocence of a child and was full of lethargy. Jian Wushuang could not help but feel that the world had changed. Don't you recognize me?" Jian Wushuang smiled at him and said, "Ah." The old man was slightly stunned. He first looked at Jian Wushuang up and down. He saw that Jian Wushuang was dressed in fine clothes. His face was fair and handsome, and his whole person was full of gentleness and elegance. At first glance, he knew that Jian Wushuang was from a great family. "Young master, have we met before?" the old man asked, confused. Before Jian Wushuang could speak, he shook his head and said, "Young master's bearing is extraordinary. This old man has never seen anyone like young master in his life. If this old man had seen one, he would definitely not forget. Forgive this old man's poor eyesight, but I really can't recognize it. Jian Wushuang smiled and made a decision. Speaking of which, he was able to comprehend the great Tao thanks to this old man's casual question when he was still a child, which opened the key to his enlightenment. Hence, Jian Wushuang decided to give him an opportunity. If this person still had a trace of childlike innocence and did not forget the dream of his youth, then Jian Wushuang would enter the path of cultivation through his cultivation method. If this person has long forgotten his dream, then I will protect him until he lives 100 years without worry and spend his old age in peace. Silly child, let me ask you, do you still have your wooden sword? Do you still want to use your sword and become the famous carefree sword Immortal? Jian Wushuang looked at him and asked indifferently. In an instant, the woodcutter trembled and he looked at Jian Wushuang with horror as if he was looking at a ghost. You're the old Immortal from back then? Old woodcutter cried out in disbelief. He immediately knelt on the ground and kowtowed repeatedly. His life had been dull and uneventful. For him, the biggest episode in his life was probably Jian Wushuang, who had told him the story of the sword Immortal when he was young. Even though time had passed and he was no longer young, he still could not forget the adventure he had when he was young. Even now, in his wooden house, there was a carving of Jian Wushuang and Lang Rushuang, who had turned into old men. Every day they were worshipped as gods. Get up! Jian Wushuang's expression was calm. He raised his right hand and a gentle divine power immediately gushed out and helped Saint Woodcutter up. There's no need to kneel, you just need to answer my question. When old Woodcutter heard that, he instantly shuddered and replied excitedly, Old Immortal, the Immortal's words back then, this old man. I can't forget it even for a day. I even left the wooden sword at home. After saying that, he quickly turned around and pulled out his wooden sword from the woodshed. At this moment, the wooden sword seemed to have aged with him. It was covered with dust, moldy white hair everywhere, and there were wormholes left by insects. Seeing this, Jian Wushuang nodded slightly. Fine. Then I'll give you a good fortune today. You, come here. Hearing this, the woodcutter didn't dare to delay. He knelt down in front of Jian Wushuang with a pious expression. Jian Wushuang stretched out his right hand and slowly pressed it on the old woodcutter's head. Then, a gentle divine power gushed out from Jian Wushuang's hand and entered old man woodcutter's body, cleansed his body and transformed him into an immortal. Slivers of sticky and stinky black liquid gushed out of old man woodcutter's body. These were all hidden injuries that had been left behind in old man woodcutter's body for many years, as well as aging cells and so on. The Immortal touched my head, tied my hair, and received longevity. For the current Jian Wushuang, it was extremely easy to reverse the life and death of Immortal. Old man woodcutter's entire body trembled. He could feel that his aged body that was usually filled with lead was recovering his youth at an extremely fast speed and reaching his peak state. A miracle! This is a miracle! Old man woodcutter shouted in his heart. He looked at Jian Wushuang with even more respect. After a while, Jian Wushuang withdrew his right hand. Looking at old man woodcutter again, his entire person had already undergone a monstrous change. Although he was still old and his face was still full of wrinkles, the essence, qi, and spirit that exuded from his entire body were even more exuberant than when ordinary people were young. Then, Jian Wushuang flipped his right hand again and a cultivation method appeared in his hand. Jian Wushuang said calmly, An old steed in hiding with ambitions of 1,000 miles, a martyr in his twilight years, with a strong heart. Today I'll give you some good fortune. You only need to comprehend it day and night and search up and down to open the door of longevity. You can be the sword immortal you wanted to be when you were young. This can also be considered as the karmic fate between the two of us. Thank you for the gift, Immortal. Instantly, tears welled up in old man woodcutter's eyes. He kept kowtowing to Jian Wushuang and made muffled sounds. When he raised his head, his eyes were empty. The immortal couple was already in front of him. Only a scroll of cultivation technique was left in front of him. They've already left? Old Man Woodcutter was slightly absent-minded, and then he carefully put away the cultivation technique. He closed the tea stall and closed the wooden door. From then on, this unknown galaxy in the desolate region of the universe lost Old Woodcutter, but gained a white-haired sword Immortal. At the same time, in the starry sky of the universe, outside of that unknown star field, a universe boat was passing away into the vast sea of stars. In the blink of an eye, the universe boat disappeared from this star field. "Husband, where are we going now?" Lung Rushuang asked in universe boat. Jian Wushuang pondered for a while and then replied, "If I remember correctly, the great clan gathering is about to begin." After a pause, Jian Wushuang continued, "I've heard that the soil of breath has appeared on planet Tianhuang. Let's go there and see if there's any Khanate Earth Qi. It'd be best if we can collect the complete Khanate 5 elements Qi before the universe banquet. Because I don't think I'll have time after the great clan gathering." Lung Rushuang raised her eyebrows and asked, "Why?" Jian Wushuang did not reply. Instead, he turned to look at the depths of the universe, where the top forces stood. The corners of his mouth gradually curled up into a cold sneer with a strong killing intent. In the desolate universe, Jian Wushuang drove universe boat and headed towards the center of the savage barren land. In the 10,000 years he had been wandering in the universe, he had collected 4 of the innate 5 elements Qi. He only needed the 3rd Earth Qi to complete the collection. Fortunately, before he went to that unknown star field, he managed to find out some information about the 3rd Earth Qi from a group of pirates who had robbed him. It was said that the soil of breath was born on planet Tianhuang, and it was where the essence of the earth was. A piece of breathing earth was only the size of a palm, but it could grow freely and never be reduced. Often, where the breathing earth appeared, it meant that the 3rd Earth Qi was stronger there. As for whether or not it had the chaotic innate 3rd Earth Qi, it was unknown. If I can find the innate Earth Qi, I will be able to completely mobilize the 5 elements chaotic force in the cauldron. By then, my strength will increase by a huge margin. Jian Wushuang's eyes flickered as he thought about it and rushed toward planet Tianhuang. When he was in the Divine Life Palace, his strength was only 1 level lower than that of a beginner supreme. During these years of wandering in the universe, Jian Wushuang had not slacked in condensing his superpower. He had become more and more mature every day and night. Now, he had completely pushed the sword move Daybreak to the initial realm. If this was only a small increase in his strength, then the great Tao of protection that he had opened up in the unknown star area a few days ago had completely transformed his divine power and allowed him to take a big step forward. He might not have undergone a qualitative transformation, but it was definitely at a height that he could not have reached in the past. Therefore, Jian Wushuang, who had not met an enemy for a long time, did not know how strong he was. Infinite Region was the largest and most famous region in the universe. This place was bustling all year round with all kinds of people. It was like a crossing, and countless cultivators who wanted to go to the depths of the universe would head to the universe passage here. Therefore, this had created a prosperous and dazzling scene on planet Tianhuang. There was no single force that could dominate planet Tianhuang. It was made up of countless sects and families. These sects and families fought against each other constantly, but they were united against outsiders. Any top force that wanted to conquer planet Tianhuang would be attacked by them together. Even the 9 Emperor Pavilion, which had opened all over the universe, had tried to extend their hands many times, but they had been strictly rejected by these clans and sects. In the end, the 9 Emperor Pavilion had no choice but to retreat. There was no other reason than the fact that they were the 3 great rulers who lived on planet Tianhuang, a small planet in the universe. Although the 3 great supremes were all ordinary supremes, and it was said that the strongest one was only an advanced supreme, even a top supreme would find it difficult to deal with them when they joined forces. Therefore, planet Tianhuang had become the most uncultured place in the universe. At this moment, on a small island in the South Sea of planet Tianhuang, countless powerful cultivators were gathered for a grand event. This piece of breathing earth was discovered by our Feng clan, so it should belong to us. Humph, the most valuable treasures in the world belong to the strongest. The Feng family is only a second-rate family on planet Tianhuang, and you want the soil of breath. Well said. The three great families haven't said anything. Is your Feng family qualified to speak? On the biggest island of the Spratly Islands were filled with powerful cultivators from planet Tianhuang. There were also powerful cultivators from other nearby planets. What they were discussing was the soil of breath that had recently appeared. The Feng family head who had discovered the breathing earth was an expert who was almost unrivaled. When he heard the commotion around him, his face immediately flushed red. Humph, fine. We'll decide the ownership of the soil of breath after the three great clans arrive. The Feng family's patriarch flicked his sleeve angrily and sat down with an ugly expression. This soil of breath had clearly been discovered by the Feng family, but now they had no choice but to take it out for everyone to split. It was truly a grieving. The others laughed and nodded. They were all discussing in low voices, waiting for the arrival of the three great families. Even though everyone on planet Tianhuang was doing things their own way, the three great families still had the most say. On planet Tianhuang, the three great families were the gods who held the power of life and death. They had supreme authority. At this moment, before the three great clans had arrived, a thin young man in a black robe and a white antelope mask had already stepped onto the beach of Spratly Sand Island. No wonder it's the most prosperous star field in the desolate area of the universe. There are no less than 100 peak ultimate rulers and more than 2 hands of unparalleled rulers. The young man with the white antelope mask looked around and smiled. He was naturally Jian Wushuang, who was steering Universe Boat and speeding over. Because there were rulers on planet Tianhuang, Jian Wushuang's ordinary appearance-changing skills were no longer effective. The rulers could see through him with one glance, so he wore the white antelope mask. The antelope mask was not used for anything else, but it could perfectly cover Jian Wushuang's aura. Even a Supreme would not be able to recognize Jian Wushuang, so it was perfect for him. As for Lung Rushuang, she was naturally kept in the heaven-suppressing monument. With so many ultimate rulers and supreme divine realm experts on planet Tianhuang, Jian Wushuang did not dare to be careless. After a while, Jian Wushuang gathered his thoughts and walked towards the center of the island. In the center of the island, there was a tall platform. On the platform, there was an apricot yellow flag. On the flag, there was a large wind character. Under the apricot yellow flag, a middle-aged man in luxurious clothes sat with a gloomy expression. Jian Wushuang listened to the discussions around him and squinted his eyes. Looking at the situation, the Feng clan must have discovered the breathing earth. The Feng clan had wanted to hide it secretly, but someone had leaked the news. Now everyone knew about it and had gathered here. The Feng family head had no choice but to discuss selling the breathing earth today. It seems that I was just in time. If I had been a little later, I'm afraid that the soil of breath would have disappeared. Jian Wushuang smiled. If there was any innate earth chi here, it must be in the breathing earth. Just as Jian Wushuang was hesitating whether to enter the Feng family directly, when he went to intercept the breathing earth, he suddenly heard a burst of surprised voices. Don't abandon you? What? Jian Wushuang raised his eyebrows and looked back. He immediately revealed a faint smile. Behind him, 2 young men and women wearing the same white robes and swords at their waists waved at him excitedly. What are you guys doing here? Jian Wushuang walked over slowly and said with a smile. It's a long story. I didn't think I'd ever see you again after we parted in the Feng E-Star field, but I didn't expect to see you again. The young man and woman looked at each other and laughed. Hearing this, Jian Wushuang slightly raised his head and nodded. We are indeed fated. They were a cultivation couple from the Heaven Sword sect in the Wildlands. Jian Wushuang had met them 5,000 years ago when he was collecting the seawater chi. At that time, a war had broken out in the star area where the seawater chi was located. The 2 of them were rulers of the 5th level, so they were naturally in danger and were being hunted down. The person who was chasing them happened to be the one who possessed the high water chi. Jian Wushuang killed the person casually and took the high water chi. Could be said that he had saved the 2 of them by accident. From then on, the 2 of them were grateful to Jian Wushuang and they had a long journey together. Jian Wushuang didn't reject them because they were innocent. After a few exchanges, the three of them became familiar with each other. Later on, the two of them returned to the Sky Sword sect, while Jian Wushuang continued to collect other innate five elements qi. They parted ways. To think that the three of them would meet on planet Tianhuang 5,000 years later. Sir Buki, we've come with the elders of our sect to gain some knowledge. The young man who was known as the Stardust Ruler laughed. Sir Buki, did you come for the soil of breath? What's going on? The young woman called the Star Ripple Dominator blinked her eyes in a playful manner. Jian Wushuang nodded slightly and replied, I guess so. Where are the elders of your sect? The Stardust Ruler pointed at the central platform, where a black-robed old man was sitting next to the Feng clan's patriarch. The elders of my family are old friends with the head of the Feng family, and they're chatting up there. Jian Wushuang nodded, indicating that he understood. The Stardust Ruler muttered to himself for a moment before saying, Your Excellency Buki, there are many hidden talents on planet Tianhuang. If you want the soil of breath, you should be careful. I heard that the three families on planet Tianhuang are all interested in the soil of breath, especially the number one genius of the Green family. Qingmu is determined to get his hands on the soil of breath. Qingmu. Jian Wushuang raised his eyebrows. The Stardust Ruler made a sound of acknowledgement, and his expression gradually became serious. That's right, that Qingmu is the number one genius of the Green family. No, it should be said that he is the number one genius in the desolate area of the universe under the stars. He was extremely talented and had become one of the strongest rulers after cultivating for only tens of millions of years. He was also blessed with great fortune. When he cultivated at a young age, he had a fortuitous encounter and 3 Dao fruits landed by his side. Later, when he traveled through the universe, he was recognized by the Demon Phoenix clan and obtained the Demon Phoenix bloodline. Later, when he reached the ruler realm, he triggered a heavenly vision and obtained the recognition of the ultimate treasure of the universe, the divine demon halberd. Now, he had been receiving guidance from the Qing clan's ancestor, the Qing clan's supreme martial artist, all year round. His strength had already reached a terrifying stage. His name was known by everyone in the desolate regions of the universe. Although he had yet to become a ruler, everyone was certain that he would become one within 10 chaos cycles. In fact, there are already many people in the desolate area of the universe who call him Young Master Qingmu. Young Master Qingmu? Jian Wushuang raised his eyebrows and his eyes were filled with interest. From what the Stardust Ruler had said, this genius named Young Master Qingmu was indeed formidable. Whether it was his own talent or his fortune, he was considered one of the top geniuses in this cosmos. To become an ultimate ruler in tens of millions of years was definitely the best in the universe except for Jian Wushuang. In the depths of the universe, he could compete with the saints of the immortal sacred lands and the divine sons of the divine nations. According to the rumors, young Master Qingmu's current strength is enough to stand shoulder to shoulder with the big shots on the ancient path of stars, where all the geniuses gather and everyone fights for supremacy. The Stardust Ruler continued in a deep voice. Is that so? Jian Wushuang raised his eyebrows and then smiled, saying, Then why didn't young Master Qingmu participate in the ancient path of stars? As if he had heard Jian Wushuang's nonchalant tone, before the Stardust Ruler could speak, the Star Rhythm Ruler pouted and said, Sir Buki, don't underestimate young Master Qingmu. He didn't participate in the ancient path of stars, but when it opened, he was in seclusion. By the time he came out, half of the ancient path of stars had already been completed, and the overlord Jian Wushuang had already left. Young Master Qingmu has great ambitions. His goal is to challenge Jian Wushuang, who stirred up a storm in the universe 10,000 years ago, killed a supreme master with a sword, and was crowned as the number one genius. When she spoke of ruler Qingmu, the Star Rhythm Ruler was different from the Stardust Ruler, who had a grave expression on her face. Her face was full of excitement and admiration, and she couldn't wait to tell Jian Wushuang in detail about young Master Qingmu's legendary deeds. Could be seen that she loved young Master Qingmu. Seeing this, The Stardust ruler couldn't help but glare at the Star Field ruler. Then, he looked at Jian Wushuang and said, "Sir Buki, please don't lower yourself to Yun'er's level." "It's fine." Jian Wushuang waved his hand and felt a little speechless. So, he had unknowingly become the target of many geniuses in the universe? The three of them were still chatting when suddenly, there was a commotion in the crowd. Someone shouted, "The three great clans are here." In an instant, everyone raised their heads and looked at the sky. In the sky above, a golden carriage was approaching. This golden carriage glowed with a golden light. The horse pulling the carriage had a pair of wings on its back and a single horn on its forehead. It was the golden-horned sun-swallowing beast of the universe. In front of the carriage, there was a large golden flag with a huge Lai character written on it. This was the Lai family of the three great families. After the golden carriage passed by, a huge ship with a flag with the word North on it came across the sky. This giant ship was incomparably majestic, like a mountain collapsing, and it let out a deafening roar. In front of the ship, two half-naked giants were using chains to drag the lofty ship forward. The Bay family of the three great families. Someone on the southern sand island exclaimed. However, more people remained silent as they focused their gazes on a tall figure who was walking over alone. He came alone against the light, so no one could see his face clearly. He didn't use any power, but he suppressed everyone. In front of this person, whether it was the golden carriage that was stepping on the sky or the towering giant boat that was pressing down on the void, they all lost their color. It was as if he was born to be the heaven's chosen one who could command the wind and clouds. As soon as he appeared, there was no need for any words, and he was already the center of attention. This person was the #1 genius in the desolate area of the universe, young Master Qingmu. Young Master Qingmu. He was publicly acknowledged as the strongest genius in the desolate area of the universe. Whether it was in terms of talent or luck, he was at the top of the universe. He had great fortune and had yet to become a supreme deity, but the treatment he received was no different from that of a supreme being. He stepped on the sky, stepping on the sun and the moon as if they were lifted up by the sky. He was the favorite of heaven and earth. Young Master Qingmu. In an instant, everyone on the southern sand island started shouting. Their expressions were fanatical, and their eyes were filled with worship, as if they were devout believers. The Starstreak ruler was also in this group. At this moment, she didn't seem like a high and mighty ruler, but more like a secular little girl who had seen an elegant young master. Her expression was extremely excited, and she shook the Stardust ruler's arm frantically, calling out repeatedly, "Stardust, quickly look, quickly look. This is young Master Qingmu." The Stardust ruler's expression was helpless. He glanced at young Master Qingmu, a hint of sadness flashing through his eyes. The two of them were both Omega rulers, but the gap between them was simply too great. "He's young Master Qingmu?" Jian Wushuang squinted his eyes and looked up. The young Master Qingmu's face was handsome and full of vigor. He lowered his head and looked down with an indifferent expression. No emotion could be seen, as if he was a god sitting alone in the clouds, overlooking the common people. Whoosh! Then, the Feng family head, who was sitting on the high platform, took a step forward and shot out to welcome them from afar. "Young Master Qingmu, how could a mere breathing earth alarm you?" The head of the Feng family bowed and smiled apologetically. "If you want this soil of breath, you just need to send someone to inform me, and I will immediately take the initiative to deliver it to you. How could I let you personally come over?" Young Master Qingmu glanced at him indifferently and said, "Since you've set the rules for everyone to obtain the soil of breath with their own abilities, I'll just follow the rules." As soon as he finished speaking, the head of the Feng family immediately flattered. As expected of young Master Qingmu, such a righteous person, on the island, the others nodded in response. "Young Master Qingmu is too righteous. Young Master Qingmu is too righteous." In an instant, the words of praise for young Master Qingmu were like a terrifying sound wave that filled the sky and rushed straight into the clouds. Jian Wushuang was mixed in the crowd and did not stand out at all. He touched his nose and could not help but find it funny. He didn't know how strong this young Master Qingmu was, but in terms of style and reputation, even an invincible ruler wouldn't be able to match him. A moment later, the young Master Qingmu sat down on the main seat with a proud expression. The young geniuses of the other two families looked at the young venerable Qingmu, who was surrounded by a myriad of stars, with complicated expressions. Young Master Qingmu. After hesitating for a moment, the people of the two clans saluted young Master Qingmu. One had to learn to judge the situation. The Green family was a supreme clan that wasn't weaker than the two of them, and young Master Qingmu was very likely to become the second supreme of the Green family. At that time, the Green family's status would probably far surpass these two great clans and become the unrivaled monarch of the desolate area of the universe. Yes, young Master Qingmu indifferently nodded. To him, be it the young talents of the two great clans or the other heroes present, or even the desolate area of the universe and the entire vast universe, as long as they had not become supremes, they were all beneath his notice. He believed that there was only one person who was qualified to be his opponent, and that person was the number one genius in the world, Jian Wushuang, who had killed a supreme master. He was confident that Jian Wushuang was the only person in the entire universe who could fight with him. He was even very confident that he could defeat Jian Wushuang within 100 moves. This was his pride. Feng Zongyun, let's start. He looked at the head of the Feng family and said, "Yes." The head of the Feng family quickly nodded and cleared his throat. He stood up and looked at the crowd below the stage. The soil of breath is the most precious treasure of the universe. It can create a star field of thousands of miles and live forever. This kind of treasure should belong to the strong. Therefore, our Feng family is willing to offer the soil of breath to the strongest person here. If one wanted to prove their strength, the rules for obtaining the soil of breath were very simple. One only needed to defeat all the opponents present and make everyone submit to one. Then one would be the owner of the soil of breath. Do you all understand what I'm saying? Everyone nodded in agreement. It was a natural principle that treasures belonged to the strong. Immediately after, their gazes turned to young Master Qingmu, and their eyes flickered. If the person who had come this time wasn't young Master Qingmu, they would still have had the heart to fight for it. But since young Master Qingmu had come, no one had the confidence to defeat him. I'm afraid this soil of breath will belong to young Master Qingmu. That's right, with young Master Qingmu here, who would dare to snatch something from him? The breathing earth will definitely belong to young Master Qingmu. Everyone was discussing. As expected, it was just as they had said. After his voice fell, Ruler Qingmu stood up and swept his indifferent gaze across the crowd. This lord wants this piece of breathing earth. Is there anyone who wants to fight with this lord? His voice was not loud, but it was full of power, and no one responded. Seeing this, the pride in young Master Qingmu's eyes became more and more obvious. At the same time, a trace of desolation welled up in his heart. The world was so big. Was there no one who could be his opponent? After a long time, an old man walked out of the crowd and said with a kind face, "Young Master Qingmu," when this old man was far away in the Jiangyu star field, "I've always heard that you have heaven-defying strength, and I've come to see you today." After the old man walked out, someone in the crowd immediately exclaimed, "Ruler Yuan Feng of the River Court Starfield. Ruler Prime Peak is an invincible ruler who has been famous for a very long time. He's one of the top warriors in the desolate area of the universe. Although young Master Qingmu is powerful, he's only cultivated for 10 million years. Ruler Prime Peak, on the other hand, spent 10 chaos cycles in the invincible ruler realm. In terms of foundation, young Master Qingmu is definitely far inferior to Ruler Prime Peak. This battle is going to be exciting." Young Master Qingmu raised his eyebrows and sized up the ruler of Yuan Peak. He then said indifferently, 3 moves. As long as you can take me on, I'll consider it my loss." Prime Peak ruler's face didn't change, and he continued to smile, but he snorted in his heart. "Venerated youth, this old man admits that you are very powerful. But to defeat me in 3 moves, aren't you being a little too arrogant?" Young Master Qingmu didn't even bat an eye. With a flip of his right hand, A domineering platinum halberd appeared in his hand. Cut the crap and make your move. Boom! In the next moment, young Master Qingmu slashed down with his halberd at the prime peak ruler. In an instant, boundless divine power gushed out and condensed on the platinum halberd. One could even hear the faint and crisp cry of a phoenix. In the middle of the halberd, there seemed to be a phoenix that was born from the flames. It soared into the sky and cried out to the world,